All right, we are going to call the afternoon session of day one, Joint Transportation, Militaries and Highways, back to order. And just to kind of give everybody a little bit of a heads up, we've been ahead of schedule. At one point, shockingly, we were 2 hours ahead of schedule. We pulled back to about an hour, and I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look at tomorrow's schedule, but this committee has got a full plate and a full agenda scheduled for tomorrow. So my goal is to try to stay at about that hour long ahead of schedule. So if we have anybody else, and I appreciate the director and all of YDOT coming over as well as early as they did. My goal is to take the 8:30 topic for tomorrow morning and finish that up this morning or this afternoon. Try to get that at least started, if not finished up. And then what that will do is allow us to have the working lunch tomorrow, but get out of here an hour earlier than anticipated on a Friday afternoon. So that's kind of the working goal as we're moving forward. With that, we're going to finish up here. We are exactly 45 minutes ahead of schedule right now. And we've got 25 LSO 82 firearm hold agreement limited liability. And Ms. Hanson, I don't know how many more of these we've got, but I think a whole bunch. So I will go ahead and send it over to you for an explanation of the bill, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hanson, staff attorney, LSO, presenting bill draft 25 LSO 82, version 0.4, firearm hold agreement limited liability. This bill draft was requested at the committee's June meeting to be based on Montana's firearm hold agreement statute. I'll start by walking through the bill draft. Section 1 starts on page 1, line 9, by creating Wyoming statute 13120 firearm hold agreements. Subsection A on page 2, lines 2 through 4 states that no cause of action shall arise against a person for returning a firearm to a firearm owner at the termination of a firearm hold agreement. Subsection B on page 2, lines 6 through 11 provides that the immunity provided in subsection A shall not apply to any action arising against a person for returning a firearm to a firearm owner at the termination of a firearm hold agreement if the action was the result of a breach of contract or otherwise unlawful conduct on the part of the person holding a firearm for another person. Subsection C on page 2, lines 13 through 19 provides a definition of firearm hold agreement to mean a written or oral agreement between a firearm owner and another person in which the other person takes physical possession of the firearm owner's lawfully possessed firearm at the owner's request, holds the firearm for an agreed period of time, and returns the firearm to the owner according to the terms of the agreement. I should note that this bill draft uses the term person. There is no definition of person provided in this bill draft, as person is defined in Wyoming statute 81102A6. Wyoming statute 81102A6 provides that as used in the statutes, unless the legislature clearly specifies a different meaning or interpretation, or the context clearly requires a different meaning, person includes an individual, partnership, corporation, joint stock company, or any other association or entity, public or private. Section 2 on page 2, lines 21 and 22 provides that this act shall apply to all firearm hold agreements entered into on or after July 1st, 2025. Section 3 on page 3, line 1 provides an effective date of July 1, 2025, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hanson. Any questions for Talise? Yes, Senator Kolb, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you contemplate this protecting somebody against a theft, fire, a loss of that nature, that frankly they could not return said firearm to the person that left it in their custody, for lack of a better word? Is there anything there that we might want to tweak? Because if there was a fire, firearms most likely gonna get lost. I mean, so just an opinion. If we're covered under that set of circumstances.
Ms. Hanson?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, I believe that could be covered under the firearm hold agreement, but there is no specific provision in this statute if you would like to expressly provide that protection, but it could be provided in the firearm hold agreement, which is a contract, if you wanted to add a provision in there or if you had an oral agreement, that probably wouldn't cover fire loss or whatever if you didn't specify that in your oral agreement. So that's something that you can consider if you wanted to add it, but
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Hanson? Yes, Representative Stivar?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if somebody's under protection order and it gets extended, you don't know about it and you give the gun back, how's this gonna protect you?
Ms. Hanson?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stivar, my knowledge on protection orders is limited, so I would have to look into that.
I think that's a good question, Representative Stivar. But I think subsection A, I think that pretty much covers it. The no cause of action shall arise from returning a firearm to a firearm owner at the termination of a firearm hold agreement. I think that provides that. But I also understand where you're coming from. It's not going to be the person giving the firearm back that could be civilly liable at that point.
Well, if it's given and that order is extended, he's still not allowed to have a firearm.
But that's not the fault of the agreement holder, right? That becomes an issue with the person who's underneath the protection order, not the person holding the firearm. I don't think you'd have to worry about that, at least in my opinion.
Mr. Chairman, I will just note that the definition of firearm hold agreement says that the firearm owners lawfully possessed firearms. So if you are, the firearm owner does not lawfully possess his firearm anymore, then that wouldn't apply.
There you go. Okay. Any further questions for Ms. Hanson? Seeing none. Okay, let's go ahead and take this over to Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate LSO's work on this bill. Kept it pretty simple. You'll see in our slides that we had proposed an amendment to define person. I'm perfectly happy with LSO's statutory construction knowledge that it's already defined in statute. So we're good with that. No amendment for that. My basis for that was as a firearm owner and knowledgeable a little bit in this area. A lot of firearm owners have trusts for suppressors and short barreled rifles under federal law. And so we want to make sure a trust owner was covered under this. And I think we're good with that as a person. And again, in terms of the background for this bill, I think Ms. Davis from the governor's office mentioned that one of the three core things they had been working on the last 3 years was firearm lethality. As we briefed last June, over 70% the data we have is from 21 and 22. 70% of Wyoming suicides across the board, over 70%, I think it's 71% last time I looked, are done by firearms. So we're really trying to address that, as this committee may recall. The mental health professionals tell us that if you can create a 5 to 10 second gap from the time of someone who has access to a firearm and decides they might want to kill themselves to being able to possess their firearm, often that will make a difference. So we're just trying to create an avenue, as we discussed in June, to make it easier for someone to take possession of some of these firearms when they voluntarily don't want them in the house for whatever's going on. So we're trying to keep it very simple, and we're just trying to make sure that that person accepting that weapon, whether it's a private person, as some of the members of the committee and myself have done for other people, or in business entity, we just want to remove that liability concern from them for doing that and then giving it back and something happens. With that, I'll stand for your questions.
Okay, Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, you perked my interest with NFA items. I frankly, you can't touch those unless you get drawn into a trust, as a trustee could write you in, but I would think we would exempt all NFA items. I mean, I don't know if it's I don't want to get anybody in trouble. You bring up a really very good point here, is that if you have the misconception that you can have an NFA item when you are not, and then you say it's a personal item, you cannot. And I think that's an important feature that we don't want to, I don't want to get people in trouble by thinking they could take somebody's firearm, which is an NFA item, SBR, but whatever it is, SBS, machine gun.
Right.
That should have nothing to do with this. Because we could, I would be concerned, your thoughts on this, that we would let somebody believe that they could do this because of this statute. And then they would have an NFA violation. Just a question to you, sir.
Mr. Smith,
Mr.
please.
Chairman, Senator Kolb, and I kind of misspoke. Some firearm owners have trusts owning their firearms, not just for the NFA part of it. And we could certainly add an amendment here to specifically exclude, I can't remember if it's NFA, those firearms that require an additional stamp NFA approval. Because some are firearms and some are suppressors. So you could remove the suppressor and still turn over the weapon as long as it isn't the weapon itself, a short barreled rifle or machine gun. So we could certainly have that amendment to this bill. Because we do not want to get into the murkiness of what the Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms Agency does with those.
Follow up.
So to be more clear about this, you may have a gun trust, right? And it may have items that are not NFA items within it. Clearly stating though that it would not cover any NFA items would be, I think, applicable to make sure that there wouldn't be a misconception that you could take an NFA item. And they should know what the NFA items are. I mean, people should know what that is. But to exclude NFA items, I think a guns trust thing, who cares? I mean, you got something in a gun trust and you want to send it over and you're the trustee. It's not an NFA violation. If you think that might be an avenue to go down.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, yes, I think that is an appropriate amendment for this statute. I don't know if we put it in section A. I'll defer to LSO's thoughts on that. But I think an amendment to specifically exclude any possession requirements for NFI items is not applicable. So we're not trying to create any limited liability for somebody violating federal law with regard to those items. I think that is an appropriate amendment and not one we considered.
Representative Pendergraft, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really like what you're doing here. I've been in the position at least twice, and I think probably 3 times when I've done exactly what you're talking about. And it'll be a great comfort to know that I'm not in jeopardy for giving somebody back their lawfully owned. If this is actually going to have an effect on curbing suicide, though, there has to be some sort of public education to know that this has been changed and that it's out there and that it's an option. Is there anything in this plan? What do we do to educate the public about what we're doing?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraft, there's nothing in the bill about that. We didn't really address it with the governor's challenge folks. This is one of their lines of effort. So I think we could, if the legislature passes this, I think we could give it to that organization to get the word out. In my limited contact with a couple of FFL holders, when we were talking about this, just for my own education, there is a national association. There are a couple of FFL gun store owner associations that we could probably get this to. I don't know what they are on top of my head, but I was going to rely on the governor's challenge folks to kind of get the word out since they have contacts across the state.
Okay. Any further discussion? Questions? Seeing none. Fairly easy for the military department. Did we want to bring up the Veterans Commission? Are you speaking on behalf of the other retired colonel?
Mr. Chairman, yes. As the committee will recall, this really was the topic of trying to get after veteran suicide. In our own ranks, as we briefed back in June, we have had a number of suicidal ideations in the Wyoming Military Department, and certainly veteran suicide. I pulled the numbers. Per capita veteran suicide, the last numbers we had were, I think, for 22. veteran per capita per 100,000 veterans in Wyoming, the per capita suicide rate is 80. To give you, what does that mean? Nationally, the suicide rate is 33. So it's 2.5 times the national suicide rate specific to Wyoming veterans. So that was the genesis. That was the reason we brought this before the committee back in June as an interim topic before that. So yeah, the Veterans Commission is very supportive of this. As Ms. Davis said this morning, this fits within what the Governor's Challenge is trying to do. It is an obvious step to me to create an avenue to try to get after veteran suicide at no cost to the state and protecting people who are willing to be involved and try to help people who are going through a mental health issue, perhaps.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. We've got no other departments up here, but we do have availability for public comment. Is there anybody in the public that would like to testify on the firearm hold agreement limited liability bill? Going once, twice, and we will close public comment. Committee will bring this bill back up to the dais. What's the committee's pleasure? Moved by Nemec. Seconded by Cole. Committee, let's work this bill quickly. Fairly easy bill, and I think we have at least one amendment that we want to work in there. I think we're going to have some movement there. Let's go ahead and start off with that. Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we need, I don't know where the appropriate numbering would be, but to exclude any NFA items under this provision. And that would be National Firearms Act.
Okay, there's motion. Seconded by Nemec. Any discussion from the committee? Seeing none, is that good enough? We'll allow the latitude for that to be worked in as needed. Okay. Committee, all in favor of the proposed amendment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. All right, that passes. Any further amendments? Yes. Co-chairman Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry I didn't bring this up before, but there was some discussion at our Rock Springs meeting about there's more than one way to prevent somebody from using a firearm. You could, put a lock on their safe and take the key, for example. I forgot who brought that up. But I wonder if that's something the committee may consider, having more general language to cover that circumstance. And so, not that it's a big deal one way or the other, but I think I'll offer that amendment just so we can have the discussion, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
So perhaps on page 2, line 15, 16, so delete takes, change physical to physically, and then add prevents use. So the and strike out possession. So it'd read, as used in this section, firearm hold agreement means a written or oral agreement between a firearm owner and another person, which the other person physically prevents use of the firearm owner's lawfully possessed firearm. And so that's the idea, make it a little bit more general. Like I said, don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other, but that was part of the discussion. I thought we'd follow up on that.
Okay, it's been moved. All right, second for at least discussion from Nemec. Okay, ready? Any further discussion on this? I would just say I'm slightly hesitant on the idea of it saying physically restricting or something along those lines, because there's a couple other ways that I could tackle you, and that would be physically prohibiting you from doing it. I wonder if it might not be better suited if we pass it as is. I do like the idea of putting something else in here, pass it as is right now, and then potentially bring something with a little bit better work of art, legalese as we come into session. Representative Pendergraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that's wide. I had the same thought. We should physically prevent the illegal bull rush him and tackle him. Probably leave it alone and work on that concept.
All right. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those against, no?
No.
No, that amendment fails. Any further amendments? Okay, seeing none. Oh, yes, Senator Cole.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, briefly, the thought that I did have about loss of the said weapon, either through fire or through theft.
Yeah.
I think I am gonna not bring that forward because I thinking it through, I think more mischief could happen. And I'll just leave it as it is.
Okay. I agree, and I was waiting for that, but I wasn't gonna say anything, so. All right. Seeing no other further discussion, Eve, would you please call roll call on 25 LSO 0082 as amended?
This is a roll call vote for 25 LSO 0082 firearm hold agreement, limited liability as amended. Senator Brennan. Senator Furphy.
Aye.
Senator Kolb.
Aye.
Senator Pappas.
Aye.
Representative Berger.
Aye. Aye.
Representative Nemec.
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn.
Aye.
Representative Obermueller.
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft.
Aye.
Representative Smith.
Aye.
Representative Stivar.
No.
Representative Wiley.
Aye.
Co-chairman Boner.
Aye.
Co-chairman Brown.
Aye.
13 aye, 1 no.
All right, thank you. And again, we'll wait on divvying these up once we're through the rest of the session. Committee, I believe that wraps up our military portion of our meeting. Before we roll into WIDOT, I'd like to thank the General, Mr. Smith, Mr. Shope, everybody else who made the trip over here today. Colonel, I'm sorry, Colonel, General, you have anything, you made the promotion. I forgot about that. So,
That's all right. I was a colonel a lot longer than I've been a general, so that's good.
anything further for us?
No, just to thank everybody. That meeting that I did have, just to give you a quick back brief, it was really discussion at the federal level on what happens if there's national civil unrest across there, either resulting from the October 7th anniversary or election sort of things, and just sort of the initial discussion, mostly it being that, the feds really can't get involved in that. You guys plan for it. So that's good. I just want to
So they don't want to get involved in the states unless it's the Rock Springs management.
Yeah, I will not go there, sir. But again, on behalf of all the men and women of the National Guard and the Wyoming Military Department, thank you for your support. And I know you're always thinking about them. Appreciate it very much. It's important to them, and them and their families appreciate everything that you do. So thank you very much for everything. I did want to make sure that I think we have quite a bit of work to do on the bill on that. We got to do that. Representative Smith, do I owe you some more on that? Are we good? All right. I appreciate the sword and shield pin too, sir. That's important. So thank you for wearing that today. That's good support. Anything else, folks, that I need to owe you from the second one? Oh, the names on 9/11.
Yes,
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
you were on the call at that point. So,
Okay.
and from the committee, on behalf of myself and the committee and the co-chair, thank you for your service. Thank every one of your airmen and soldiers for their service as well. And safe travels back. Appreciate you guys. Thank you. All right, committee, that puts us, we picked up another 20 minutes, so we are cruising right along. And with that being said, directors, you guys are coming forward. One of the things that you guys have certainly noticed is tomorrow is a full day. And as we already talked, we're trying to scoot along a little bit for you guys. But the committee directives this morning were to keep comments pithy, questions pithy. My expectation, I know the co-chairman is the same way, is that if there's something in the materials that somebody asks you a question on, you're allowed to just let us know that is in the materials and it's on this page. You don't have to go into much more detail than that if you don't need to. So with that, Director, please introduce yourself for the record. Mr. Gillette, you as well. And we are on to county roads.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Committee, Darren Westby, Director of WIDOT. Thank you for the opportunity and for the questions that are coming in on the county roads. Hopefully we can try to get some education on what we do, why we do it in regard to those roads. And I'll turn it over to Chief Engineer Mark Gillette.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Mark Gillette, Chief Engineer with WIDOT. And according to the committee directive we received, we basically had two questions on county roads. First question was provide information on the department's authority to set speed limits on county roads and the process for adjusting those. And the second question was provide documentation and information on what authority does YDOT have to repair and maintain county roads? So first question, speed limits. Title 31, Chapter 5, Article 3 of the Wyoming statute establishes speed limit regulations for all public roadways in Wyoming. And then in your materials in the middle part of that page is the statutorily speed limits for all public roadways. And I would direct you down to F and G, which primarily denotes for county roads. And under F there, on all YDOT state highways that are not interstates, the statutory speed limit is 70 miles an hour. And for all other paved roadways, it's 65. And then G, all unpaved roadways is 55 miles an hour. Now, statutorily set speed limits certainly can be changed. And under statute 315303 authorizes local authorities to establish specific maximum speed limits. And under 355304, it authorizes them for minimum speed limits. Of course, there's some requirements that come with adjusting speed limits. No statutory speed limit shall be altered and enforced unless an engineering and traffic study is conducted in accordance with the rules and regulations, Chapter 30, or through the design plans of a reconstructed highway stamped by a Wyoming professional engineer. And then the second requirement there is you have to sign the segment of road that you're changing the speed limit on, and the signs need to be in line with the latest manual on uniform traffic control devices, or the MUTCD. And then we provided quite a bit of documentation in the packet relating to all that. And if I can, Mr. Chairman, I'll go on to question number 2 if you wish.
We'll just make sure we don't have any questions on statutory authority on setting speed limits, county roads. Anybody on the committee? I think that's pretty clear, so appreciate that. On to question B.
Okay, second question, provide information on YDOT's authority to repair and maintain county roads. The short answer there is YDOT has no authority to maintain or repair county roads. And I listed a couple statutes there, Wyoming 24-1-104, management and control of county roads, basically says that all county roads are under the supervision and control of the Board of County Commissioners. Now that particular statement implies existing roads, so I also listed Wyoming statute 24-1-102B, which basically says that it provides authority to the county surveyor in the county in which the county is located to prepare plan specifications, and the county board of commissioners shall designate materials for that construction. So that kind of implies new county roads covering both situations. Now, throughout Title 24, when right-of-way, signage, bridge construction, other aspects of maintaining and repairing roads is discussed, it clearly denotes that the County Highway Authority is the Board of County Commissioners for county roads. Now, certainly at times, YDOT does perform construction repairs to county roads. However, it always does so through an agreement with the Board of County Commissioners. And in the packet, I've listed both of those statutes. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for any questions.
Committee, any questions? We'll open this back up. General, yes, Senator Colt, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'm shocked to find out you do things for county roads, because when I was a county commissioner, I don't recall that happening. So could you give an example of what you do for county roads, though, or instead of a cooperative agreement? I'm just curious. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Gillette.
Mr. Chairman and Senator, we do many things for county roads. This year, we have programmed about $120 million for local governments. That includes counties and cities, of course. The required amount of money through the various programs that we provide is about 88 million. And then we have about 32 million of what we call discretionary funds that we provide to counties that we don't have to and is not required. We do have about 22 programs that we help local governments. And a lot of these programs apply to both counties and cities, so I can't break it out specifically for you how much money goes where. But we do provide, like I said, 22 various programs, money for those. Some of the bigger ones that go right to the road itself is the BROS program, which stands for Bridge Off System, where we help local governments with bridges. The CMAQ program, which air quality, the half part of that is what we provide for counties. And then the High Risk Rural Road program, the CRIP program, which is the county or commission road improvement program. And then just lately through IDGA is the Bridge Formula program. And through that program alone, we're providing about $101 million to counties and cities, or excuse me, just to counties for helping them replace their bridges. Now that's over the next 5 years.
Okay.
So hopefully that answered your question.
Definitely eye-opening. Committee, any other questions regarding the county roads? Yep. Co-chairman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to the speed limit discussion, it's my understanding that's the primary reason why we have this topic is, there are some counties that want it more flexibility in setting the speed limits on the county roads. So I guess my first question is, what is your opinion about that 55-mile-an-hour speed limit on all other unpaved roadways, which I'm assuming encompasses a vast majority of county roads? Is that appropriate, or it seems a little fast to me, frankly. I'm just wondering if in your professional opinion, is 55 appropriate, or would it be better suited to have a different speed limit set there in statute?
Mr. Gillett.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I would say that, that was statutorily set by the legislature. My opinion, since I am not out there on county roads a lot, working on them, et cetera, I would certainly leave that up to the County Board of Commissioners to decide whether that's too high or too low. My personal experience, sometimes that probably is a little high.
Okay. I think the impetus behind this, if everybody remembers, a lot of this had to do with a big portion, or at least had to do with certainly oil field traffic, but also the inability, and I actually just had this discussion with our mayor just a couple of days ago, that the impacts of going through chapter 30s, okay, we got to do an impact study, we got to find us out, the time, the effort, and the money that is spent on doing that type of information just to reduce that. Has there been any discussion at your level with your group to maybe look at changing the rules to maybe not make that not as onerous? Or is that something that we need to come through and we need to strike a bill and say, we're gonna allow the county commissioners and or the city to do this, through a different process? Has there been any discussion with your cohorts and then also maybe with the rest of the county commissioners across the board as well?
Mr. Chairman, no, there has not been any discussion at my level.
Okay.
I would add to that we're bound to the MUTCD, a national manual for traffic control devices, as well as setting speed limits. And in that manual, it basically says the same thing that chapter 30 says. So.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just, as a professional engineer, knowing the responsibility and the liability that comes with that stamp that is required by law, that has to be done before you can either increase or decrease a speed limit. Even if you were to take the county and the city responsibilities off us and put it towards them and say they are responsible for that, I would almost venture to guess that they will still do a traffic study. They will still do a speed study. Because if you're going to stamp it, you are liable and responsible for what happens if you decrease the speed and everybody's traveling at a higher rate of speed and it creates more issues, or vice versa. If it's already a high and you decrease it, well, everybody's still. And so I would still venture to guess that the process that a professional engineer would require before they feel comfortable either recommending up or down, they would still probably want to follow that process.
Okay. Senator Kolb, did you have something else?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I forgot about the CMAQ program about the dust control. But beyond that, I look forward to hearing from, like, say, our Sweetwater County road engineer that deals with this all the time. We have not had a problem that I can tell you in Sweetwater that was back in the day about people driving. Maybe people drive, they're probably too fast in some cases, but they do a great job at doing a speed study and evaluating what the roads can do. And ours is probably different because we have a lot more open spaces and a lot more miles of road than, say, another county. So it may very well just be a county by county issue. I mean, I guess I would ask the question, do you see a problem, Director, with the way that we're currently doing it with the requirements for speed studies and, in evaluating the roads? Has there been anything come up that you're aware of that, makes you wonder if we're doing it correctly?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, thanks for the question. We get calls relatively regularly asking us to slow speeds down. Then we get calls regularly to speeds up, sometimes on the exact same road. And so that's why I think it's really imperative to ensure that the speed studies and the analysis goes into traffic flow, normal speeds, high speeds, low speeds, and all of that goes into the equation before an engineer can come up with a recommendation, either go up or down. So, I mean, we're comfortable with it. We're more than happy to work with you and the counties and the cities to come up with a solution that they would like a little bit easier. But from the process perspective, at least on our side, I'd love to hear the contrary. I believe we even help pay for the University of Wyoming to do the speed studies. If one is asked, we pay the University of Wyoming to go out and use their skills and their equipment to go out and do the speed studies. Now, it might be a timing issue of when they can get out there to do it for you, but it's relatively low cost to have those speed studies done. And then they too have a professional engineer that gives that recommendation as well. So I'm thinking that the process works, but we're always amenable to improvement if it would help you and your local communities.
Yeah, Representative Obermueller, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gillette, I want to go back to the second question under B. I'm talking about YDOT's authority has no authority to repair or maintain county roads. And then you split but you said about roughly 120 million is spent on it. So you don't have the authority to do the repair, but you spend the money for somebody else to repair. Is that part of my statement true? That you're providing the money, but somebody else is doing the repairs and maintenance on the county roads or bridges, or how does that split out there?
Please.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, certainly, yeah, we provide the money. A lot of that money is federal money, so we're a pass through. And depending on the program, sometimes we will have an agreement. Well, always we'll have an agreement with the county board. However, sometimes we'll do the work, but in a lot of cases, other folks will do the work. So I would guess in most cases, a contractor does that kind of work.
Follow-up, Mr.
Follow-up,
Chairman.
please.
So you talked about 88 million of it being established by somebody. Are you saying that that's all federal money, the 88 million portion? Did I hear you the number right? As far as the breakdown, you had a discretionary amount and an amount you
Yeah.
had to be spent. Is that all federal money that has to be spent that way?
Mr. Gillette?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Representative. No, it's the 88 million is what's required through the various programs. There are state and federal programs that are both included in that 22 that I mentioned. The 88 million is what's required. The other 32 million that I mentioned is programs that are not required that we do and our commission is approved for us to do, you know, basically out of the goodness of our heart, such as the CRIP program. That program is not required by the feds any longer, but we, through our commission, decided to keep that program going. So the $3.3 million that we allot for that program today is $3.3 million that would come off our system. We could spend that money on our system if we decide not to continue the program. And there's a couple of programs out there where there is a certain amount of money required through the feds, but we'll overmatch that or we'll add more money to it, such as the BROS program that I mentioned or the bridge off system.
Okay, and these are, Mr. Chairman, and so it's the commission that approves all these transfers to the county, from the state to the county?
Mr. Chairman and Representative, that's correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all for now.
Committee, any further questions on public road or county roads? Seeing none. Thank you guys for that. We'll go ahead and open this up for public comment. Oh, I guess we have County Commissioners Association on here. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to do that to you, Jonathan. I'm sorry, man. Yeah, it looks like we got a couple county commissioners too, so that was really rude. Now you throw me underneath the bus. Road engineers? Oh,
County road engineer.
okay. We have quite a packet of information here, committee, that was also handed out sitting here that I think we're going to be going through as well. So,
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jonathan Russell, Wyoming County Commissioners Association. We had two asks of us today. Number one, to provide information on the process for setting and adjusting the speed limits on county roads. And number two, also to provide information on the current conditions of county roads and any issues with those roads. So I have three individuals with me today. Number one, Gene Legursky. Gene is the Public Works Director for Sweetwater County. Sitting next to Gene is John Polma, the Assistant Director of Public Works for Laramie County. And joining us online is Brian Edwards, the County Engineer for Park County Public Roads Department. So these men are going to be able to give us a presentation as well as answer any questions that you may have for us. With that, I'll turn it over to Gene.
please just introduce yourself and we're ready to learn.
Good luck with that. My name is Gene Legursky. I'm currently the Public Works Director for Sweetwater County.
And John Polma, the Assistant Director of Laramie County.
So I'll try to not bore you guys with what you currently have in your thing, but I want to do some highlights on this. As Jonathan said, we're going to break this up into two basically things. What does it count to do a speed study and what effect does that have on the counties? And then we'll discuss further on what is the state of the county roads out there. Both John and I belong to WACERS, which is the Wyoming Association of County Engineers and Road Superintendents. It has all 23 counties wrapped into it. We meet twice a year online, a bunch of different times. We have a really good working group that discusses all the different counties. And every county has, as you guys can imagine, its own unique challenges because you guys represent those people. With that, I guess the hard part is, if we can go to the first slide, and I'll try not to turn. I want to make sure I'm on the same slide as you guys. So if I'm rude, you see the back of my head every once in a while. I just want to make sure that you guys are right. We're going to talk about speed studies. I want to assure you guys over on the left-hand side of that slide, That is a real picture. Wile E. Coyote is not underneath that rock anywhere. That is actually a real picture of what happens on county roads every once in a while. State roads, every place like that. Slide number 2, please. If we go on to that, and we've already discussed that, what we're really concentrating on is the 55 miles per hour on all other unpaved roads. As you can imagine, counties have a ton of unpaved roads. And to go out and do a speed study on every single unpaved road is hard. It's difficult. One of the things that you have to remember on an unpaved road or a speed limit is you have to have at least 100 vehicles per day to qualify for a speed study. Some of them roads, you might be waiting 2 weeks, a month to get 100. You know, some happen within the first hour. So that's one of the other things. The other thing that you have to remember is an unpaved road does not have any surface on it that maintains itself and is weather resistant. Rain, wind, dust, snow melt, everything like that affects the surface of that county road. It also affects the surface to the point where skid resistance, wear resistance, rutting, everything like that come into play. We can go to the next slide. Why do we do speed limit studies? Safety. Properly established speed limit helps everybody. Reduce the frequency and severity of crashes. Uniformity. Make sure everybody's traveling at the same speed. I just came across I-80 today. I can guarantee you that's false. Some people are doing 90 to 100. Some people are doing 55. It all depends on what they're doing. One of the things about that is how many times are county roads patrolled? Everybody's short-staffed in the sheriff's department all the way across. And I can tell you, we've done 29 county speed studies within our road system. And by looking at the speed study and getting with our sheriff, Sheriff Grossnickel, I can tell you which ones are actually patrolled and which aren't. The ones that are patrolled are within 5 miles an hour of what the speed limit says. The ones that aren't patrolled, Katie bar the door. You don't know where they're going to be. So enforcement is one thing. I don't want to point fingers at anybody. Enforcement is a tough job. It's a thankless job. But that's one of the key components. We can put as many speed limits out there as possible. People are going to travel as fast as they feel comfortable. One of the things of a speed limit is notifies drivers of the maximum speed considered safe during favorable weather and visibility. Okay. Favorable weather, everybody's been across I-80, I-25 in the snow. Probably not favorable conditions. Everybody slows down. The problem with that is in my county, we have 12 blade operators that cover 1,200 miles of county road. Some of my guys travel an hour and a half one way to work just to sit in a blade and blade 5 to 6 miles of road. We have a weather condition that happens in Bear Oil. Bear Oil is in Sweetwater County. It's 2 hours to get there to repair that culvert that got washed out, the road that got washed out or whatever like that. And if nobody goes down there because it's a very little used road, the first person on it's going to get surprised. I know John was talking, you guys have how many different?
Yes, sir. Currently, Laramie County has gone from 13 to 17 motor grader operator areas to cover approximately 1,200 miles of road. And then we also have an additional 250 miles of paved road as well that we're responsible to maintain.
So there's a high volume of county roads out there that have varying conditions. If we can get to go to 2 more slides from now. So I'm not going to bore you with reading this, but the director talked about 35.5, 303 through 304, and that basically sets up how you do a speed study. And the main thing that the speed study I want to do is it's national standards for such roads. As they said, you have to have a professional engineer sign off on that. I'm a professional engineer. I take that very, very serious. What I do is I put my stamp and my reputation and my license on the line when I stamp off on that. If something happens, they come to me and say, hey, how come you raise that speed limit? How come you lower that speed limit? So we always do speed studies before we do that. The things that we prescribe by is AASHTO's policy on geometric design of highways. It's called the Green Book by all engineers. Vertical curves, sag curves, everything like that are designed in that. There's people that are way smarter than any of us up here or anybody on the line that have went through this and say, hey, skid resistance, friction, crown, all those stuff play into that. There's also a guideline for geometric design of low volume roads, which are about 80% in the counties. Low volume roads are in the counties. The other important one is the manual on uniform traffic control devices. We call it the MUTCD manual. That really gets into signage, how you do signage, and it's a national standard. So everybody can drive. You can go from Nebraska to Iowa to, Texas even. And everything is the same. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative.
Thank you. So if the speed limit is 30, there's a national standard for what signage you have to put on that.
Please.
So, and
Mr. Chairman.
vice versa for every speed limit.
Correct.
So we
Mr.
can drop
Chairman.
it. Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative O'Hearn, there's a signage in there, but it also depends on what size of the road is. Like interstate highways, obviously you're going at a faster speed. The signs are bigger. County road, the sign's going to be smaller. It depends on what those are. And that's, everybody knows a speed limit sign's a black and white. That's in the MUTCD manual. That's an enforcement sign. That's exactly like that. It's like that throughout the country. So did I answer your question?
Hold on. I guess what I'm saying is the federal government is saying what posting we have to put on there, but it's not telling us what speed limits to put on our roads.
Correct. It tells you the size and the type of sign, the speed limit study and the state statute 31.5 tells us what we have to do on the county roads. And that was set back in 2011 by the state legislature.
Go ahead and continue, please.
Okay. If we can go to the 55 miles per hour on all other unpaved road signs. Next one. 2 different county roads up in Park County. The one on the left with all the gravel happened in a couple of days, wash out on the top of a hill. Obviously you can't drive 55 miles an hour down that road. The one on the right is it's not residential. Most people, by state statute, residential is 30 miles per hour. That's not residential. That's more of a ranchette. A lot of areas north of Cheyenne, stuff like that. The hard part about it is you have differing speed limits of expectations. The director spoke to this, get a call on the same day, and I do this the exact same, and I know John has, Brian has. We'll get a call and say, hey, the speed limit's too fast. My kids were playing outside. Can you lower it to 30? Next phone call you get, hey, can we raise the speed limit to 65 because I'm driving to work and I'm sick of driving 4 miles on a 30-mile-an-hour road. If we can go to the next one, 65 miles an hour on all other unpaved roads. This is actually one in Sweetwater County that we just redid. It is posted at 55 miles an hour. The reason for that is it's through BLM for 3 miles. We did not have enough right-of-way width, and BLM would not grant us enough right-of-way width to get all of the design guidelines to make the runoff distance and everything 65. So that is another thing that throws in this thing where, the speed studies are critical, but everybody looks at me. The hardest part about it is the most important road that I drive down is the road that I'm on right now. And, in today's culture, that's more and more true. There's a whole lot of things when you go through a design thing, it's interesting because everybody's like, why doesn't the county design more roads? And I'm speaking for my county. We have 2 engineers. Most road designs, it'll go through 12 to 14 engineers, surveyors, and other people to design one road. YDOT's the same thing. So, next slide, please. On this slide, this is a traffic count that is generated automatically by most traffic counters that you see out there. They're the 2 tube devices that you see all over state highways and county roads all the time. This is the main backing of what it does. And what this does is it actually tells how many vehicles a day and how fast they're going. On a speed limit study, you're looking at the 85th percentile of what people are traveling down that road at. On this road, this is a mine road. It's actually posted at 55 miles an hour. We're looking, hey, do we need to up this speed? The 85th percentile of traveling speed on this road, if you look down at your speed totals, 80.5 miles per hour on this road. It's posted at 55 currently. It obviously needs to be raised. The interesting thing is top speed on that road, 123.8. Slowest speed on that road, 5.3. So county roads have a varying degree of traffic. This was probably, rancher going out and looking at his sheep, his cows, driving around, making sure they were counted. The other one was probably a miner that was late to work, that was trying to make it on time. So when you guys look at this and everything like this is what goes into a speed study. And this is what we're looking at before we raise the speed, we lower the speed.
Question for you, Gene, before you move on really quick. What does enforcement look like for something like this? And I know that's outside of your particular purview, right? But what type of discussions happen with when you see something like this? What type of communication happens with your sheriff's department to say, man, our schools are hurting for money, right? This is a good way to make some money flow into those schools. What kind of discussion is had there?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't quite put it like that. I don't, but I alert them and say, hey, we just did a speed study on this road. It's posted at this, and we're seeing speeds of 15, 20, 25 miles an hour over it. A lot of them, and talking with Sheriff Grossnickel, we have 4 patrol officers in Sweetwater County at any one time.
Yeah.
It's 1,200 miles of road.
Yep. Okay.
That's tough. And they concentrate around the population centers, obviously, because they help with backup for the varying departments. So patrol it's a necessary evil. It does do the correct thing, but enforcement is the key. It's the same as a stop sign. Stop sign is only good unless, a couple who get begged at a stop sign. It isn't any different.
Kind of being a little facetious there with.
No, I 100% understand where you're going.
Yes, Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for the record, it wasn't me at 123 miles an hour.
No, he was just in the 85th percentile.
It's, yeah, within the percentile of average. In all seriousness, I guess it was my last understanding that we didn't use those specific speeds to turn someone into the sheriff's office. I think, I thought the reason is because we don't want, frankly, I think those speed sensors being torn up. As soon as people found out they were being used for law enforcement, that'll be the end of that. So I guess, has that changed from what I knew before, Gene Legursky?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Cole, it hasn't changed. The stuff still gets torn up when they see them out there because they know what we're doing. It's not an enforcement issue. We've already collected the data and crunched the numbers after that. And we're just like, hey, these aren't matching up. What's going on? And they'll say, we haven't been on that road in 8 months, stuff like that. So we can point out the discrepancies, but we also want to understand from an engineering perspective is, hey, what's going on that road? Is the 85th percentile, do we need to raise this to 65 miles an hour? Or is the 85th percentile off that much because it's not patrolled? The hard part is we're relying on people with these speed studies. The 85th percentile is what people feel is reasonable, prudent, and they feel safe at going at. The hard part about it is, if you guys can remember in the 1970s, what a car felt like doing 75 down the highway versus a car today doing 85 miles an hour. There's no comparison. So people are getting more comfortable with faster speeds. We can go to the next slide, please. So basically, when we do this, that's everything that we look for. Date, time, traffic, vehicle count. ADT stands for average daily traffic. ADTT, average daily truck traffic. 50th percentile, 85th percentile, average speed. We also look at crash data. It's really interesting. I have a county road that's 28 miles long in the southwestern portion of the county. And if you look at the crash data for the last 10 years, it reads like this: deer, deer, cow, deer, antelope, cow, deer, antelope, cow. There's no other loss of life. There's no other anything like that. But it's a ranching community. The speed limit's posted at 45 miles an hour. The average speed on that road is about 87. It's one of those things because everybody feels comfortable with that road. But then you come on a black baldy cow and 2 o'clock in the morning and it hurts. So, next slide, please. This was compiled by T2. They've done 129 speed studies for different people, different counties. And we've done a lot more. I know John's talked about it. Brian's talked about it a lot more. We go out and use various engineering companies to do those. Speed study, depending on the length of the road and how much time they have to spend on it, signage, everything like that, is between $5,000 and $8,000 a road. Just to kind of give you guys some round numbers. They take a couple months to do, in order to collect all the data, do all the data, crunch all the data, look at it, go back out and do that. One of the things that you have to do is if you're going to raise a speed limit from 45 to 55 or 55 to 65, you have to go drive all of those curves and do what they call a ball bank indicator and make sure that the comfortableness of the driver and the G-forces going around that corner don't set off your internal panic button. You can always, and if they do, what you do is you actually sign those corners differently. But if I go down and I do 65 miles an hour on a road, then I have to re-sign all the corners and I have to make sure they're comfortable. Some of them are 65, some of them end up being 45. So we have to do that. But the main thing on this road is, if you look at this is gravel roads. And if you look at the center of the bell curve, most gravel roads during the speed studies, the speed limit was between 30 and 50 miles an hour. So that relates back to, the state legislature set the speed limit on gravel roads back in 2011 at 55. As wasters, we think it should be 45. There's a lot of data in there looking at that. Changing conditions on roads, stuff like that. It's a little thing. Are some roads 55, 65 mile an hour gravel roads? Sure. But in order to get out there and sign all county roads and do speed studies on county roads, it's prohibitive to us to do that in a timely manner. Next slide, please.
Nope, got a question for you.
And so just appreciate you bringing that up. Say the legislature did change it to 45 miles an hour, would that require, I mean, so you go through and then move everything to 45 miles an hour, I imagine, then you have to, if it needs to be faster, you go through and do studies for that.
Correct.
That increase. So I'm just wondering how much workload would that create on the counties if, you know, say there are some legitimate roads that it should be 55, 60 miles an hour. How much extra work are we doing if you're basically, I'm assuming starting from page 1, you have to go back and increase those speed limits on all those roads. Is that a correct assumption? Is that the procedure?
It is a little bit, if I may. When you look at those roads, the 55 mile an hour unpaved county roads are very few and far between. We all know where they are. We know the geometric design of them. Chances are they were designed for that one and they were designed for the traffic speed. Most county roads out there are not 55 mile an hour roads. I can speak to 75% of the roads that I have in the county. They were cow trails, sheep trails, wagon trails. We went out and bladed the road and we tried to create a road from there. There's very little design and stuff like that. And what that has us do is it's the opposite effect. It says that the speed limit is 55 miles an hour on a gravel road unless otherwise posted. In order to post that, you have to do a speed study. If it drops to 45, that 10 mile an hour speed limit makes us feel more comfortable that we don't have to go out and check more roads. We only have to repost those roads that we feel comfortable with that are higher speed limit. So does that answer your question?
Follow up.
So not even a follow up, different one. What's the history here? The last time this was changed was 2011. What do you know what changed in 2011? Do you have any insight into the discussion that led us?
I was not here at the time, but talking to different people, it was uniformity. You know, everybody has that favorite story in a city or a town or on a county road where a person called up and their dog got killed, and I wanted a 20 mile an hour speed limit, and a well-meaning county commissioner or well-meaning person that works for the city went out and posted at 20 miles an hour. So they were trying to get some engineering study and engineering beat behind those so we could really support those because they were starting to get challenged in a court of law. The interesting thing about that is that on the first 2 readings, the unpaved county roads was at 45, and on the 3rd reading, it went to 55. I don't know the reason why.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, on this one, though, as you can see on all the 129 roads, most of the roads out there that have been studied have 0 to 50 vehicles per day. You know, so to go out and do a speed study for 0 to 50 vehicles per day is pretty tough. When you start getting in that 150, 200, counties actually start looking at either doing a double chip seal or something to improve that road to make it more of a paved type surface. So go to the next one, please. With that kind of wraps up what we had for speed studies. John, do you want to add anything?
Okay. Committee, any questions on speed studies before we move on to the next topic, which is the condition and needs? Seeing none? Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Oh,
Oh,
yes, I
Yeah,
can
Mr. Chairman,
barely read that, but I believe it's Brian. Is that right?
Yes, I'm Brian Edwards, part-time engineer. And if you can hear me okay. I just wanted to throw in before you moved away from the speed studies, just a little bit of, I guess, additional background on a few things. Where you're at there in Albany County, in getting ready for this, Gene, myself, John, we reached out to all the other counties and our members of WACERS and just try to get some feedback from them of some of the issues they're facing on speed studies and speed limits and everything else, and just some of the other issues we're going to talk about. But for example, there in Albany County, where you're at, 580 miles of road. Of those 580 miles of road, 92% of them are unpaved, and only 25% of their roads are posted. And, you know, when we talk around the state, there's quite a few gravel roads that are unpaved roads that don't even have a gravel surface. You know, I think it depends on which county you go to, and some are able to do more, some have different budgets and whatnot. But a lot of them have very limited resources, and then just that 55 mile an hour speed limit on roads that can vary widely from no gravel, you know, to narrow roads, to steep roads, to You know, you were talking about, Gene was talking about ones in his county or ones that were designed for that 55 mile an hour. I know here in Park County, we don't have any gravel roads that a person should be driving 55 miles an hour. So I think wasters, from what we heard loud and clear from our constituents, we would really like the legislature to revisit that unposted limit, because like I say, when you figure in Albany County, 75% of the roads aren't posted. It's tough for enforcement to do much if somebody is driving faster than the conditions when those roads are posted at 55. There's not much that they can do. And so I really hope, I guess, on behalf of Wasters, we hope that that can be looked at again, because the data, like the Gene just presented, really supports that. The other thing I mentioned, like Gene said, I think it's critical to follow that the national standard as far as the MUTCD guidelines for establishing speed limits. We have a great resource in YDOT and LTAP that for no cost to the counties are willing to go conduct those studies under the guidance of an engineer. And even if you're using that 85th percentile speed and it feels like your speed limits are going up or down and you're staying within five miles an hour of that 85th percentile, there's still provisions for engineering judgment when you get into, like Gene said, curves or steep grades or blind areas or number of driveways. So I really caution from trying to move away from a standard that's really been tried and true and is used all over the country as the basis for setting speed limits. So other than that, that's about all I have on speed limits, but welcome to answer any questions that you may have.
I think that was like 3.5 minutes. I'm surprised you didn't want to drive 8.5 hours to come give us that 3.5 minutes of testimony, sir. Senator Cole, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question to the Wyoming County Commissioner Association. Has this question been asked? And what if, I guess it has, and what was the answer? I mean, what were the majority of your members wanting to do about this speed limit, Jonathan?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Cole, yes, the question has been asked and Brian just hit on it. And I like the term, the engineering judgment is what they would like to have they know those local roads and how they're used. An example was given in the Lander area of a high amount of pedestrian and bicycle traffic they're seeing on the roads now. And so that is a judgment that has to be taken into account when looking at the speed limits and such on those roads. So the short answer is yes, the question has been asked and this engineering judgment, which again, I like that term, is what was relayed back to us.
All right, let's go ahead and move on. Let's tackle the condition and needs.
If we can go to the next slide, please. I think one thing that's important is our county roads considered part of the transportation network in Wyoming. YDOT has 7,402 centerline miles of roadway, and I use centerline miles of roadway because I don't want people to get confused. I-80 has multiple lanes on it. I-25 has multiple lanes on it. I-90. I'm not comparing those. What I'm saying is, in round numbers, they have 7,902 centerline miles of road. If you take that into account, those are all paved roads, by the way. If you take that into account, statewide, the counties have 2,303 centerline miles of paved road, but we take care of 15,000 miles of dirt, non-paved roads, okay, gravel, all other surfaces. We can go to the next slide, please. I want to make it clear that YDOT is a great resource for us. I talk to our resident engineers, our district engineer down in Sweetwater County all the time. They're not the same. Traffic volumes alone. I've worked on all three interstates. I-80 is insane. Everybody's been across I-80 to understand what the traffic is. I don't have any county roads that match one lane of I-80. However, I would venture to say that nobody in here works, plays, recreates, extracts any kind of mineral, any kind of energy resource, any kind of sugar beet, does any kind of wheat off the state or federal highway. almost all those come off the county road or a private road. And that's how important we are. How I look at that is if you look at, and I'm not a biologist by any means. If you look at your blood flow in there, we're the arms. WYDOT is the heart and the central nervous system. But if you cut off your arm, you're going to miss it. And that's the way I look at county roads. If we can go to the next slide, please. This is just an interesting slide we threw in there. Here's all the counties, all 23 counties that make up all the roads. And you can see that the majority of the roads to the right make up the majority of the paved roads within all the different things. We have varying segments, varying lengths. You know, I have in Sweetwater County alone, I have some paved roads that are 2 miles long, and I have some that are 28.5 miles long. I don't have any longer than that, but that's kind of the gist of it. If next slide, please. Through T-squared, LTAP, and through state or federal gas tax, every 2 years, all the paved county roads on the west side of the state are ran with a van. And basically the van takes all kinds of varying measurements. The other opposite years, the east side of the state gets this done. If you put those all together, this is what it comes up with: crack, international rutting, and PQR. The red line that we have in there is the WYDOT standard for where roads are. And you can see on cracking, we're doing pretty good. Okay, there's, you know, half a dozen counties that have a majority of the roads that are cracking beyond what's acceptable. If you look at IRI, almost all the county roads have problems with IRI. We can go to the next slide, please. PQR is a new term that WYDOT's went to, so we've adopted all of our stuff to there. Pavement quality. None of the counties have good enough pavement quality on any of their roads. Okay, that's a WYDOT standard. And what we're looking at as wasters is to figure that out, because obviously we're not WYDOT. People aren't traveling 80 miles an hour down an interstate system. So we need to figure out as wasters where we are, along with the county commissioners, where those things need to be. Rutting, we're actually doing well. And the reason that rutting is going well in most counties, we don't have the crazy loads. If you guys have ever seen the 1.5 million pound load that came out of Laramie and went up to, I think the wind farm north by Medicine Bow, there was 5 of those transformers. They went on the road. That's a heavy load. Axled correctly. However, they did go across 2 Carbon County bridges. 1.5 million pound load across 2 county bridges. So next slide, please. This just kind of goes into what I was talking about. 35% are poor and very poor condition as far as cracking goes. IRI 75%, PQR is 90, and rut we have 95% good condition. A lot of that is because we just don't see the heavy loads and the heavy repetitive loads on ours. You got anything to add on that?
No, Laramie County is very much the same. We have had large loads like that being offloaded along rail spurs and stuff outside of the city of Cheyenne. And we did see some road damage from that, but it was fairly minor. But if we had continued loads like that, we would certainly, you know, not fare well from that at all.
So next slide, please. So what are we talking about? We put it out to wasters and we got comments from probably half of the counties in this, and I won't go through every single one of them, but if you look at Albany County, they have 580 miles of road. Their annual budget is $881,000. Okay, for 580 miles of road that they have to keep up with. Bighorn County, they have 230 miles of paved road, 89.7 miles of paved road. They have 34 bridges to maintain. 8 of them need to be replaced. Now, one thing that we need to discuss is how do bridges get replaced in the state? WYDOT graciously inspects all the bridges. Anything over a 20-foot span is inspected by WYDOT, which is great because it goes into a database. It's the same people that do it. Randy Ringsmeyer and his crew do an awesome job. The BROS program that does it, before the bill funding came out from the feds, it's an 80-20 match. 80% WYDOT Fed money, 20% county match. Sometimes that goes, for varying reasons, it goes down to 9.8 or 9.7% county match, but there's always a match until the new BROS funding came out, the director talked about. Sweetwater County's lucky enough, we got 2 bridges. We're going to get 2 bridges replaced in 2028. All the counties got bridges replaced through this. I won't say essentially for free because nothing's for free, but the county will not expend any money on those because they're being paid for by somebody else. So that's an awesome deal. You look at, I know Park County, Brian can speak to that, they have 69 bridges. I don't know how they do that. They got 69 bridges. Okay, that is a ton of bridges. If you go through like Hot Springs County, they have 236 miles, their total budget 656,000. Park County, same thing, 312 miles of paved road, about 50% of the roads are paved. Teton County, they're kind of an interesting beast. They don't have very many county roads, but they have an inadequate connectivity problem. They're not a true transportation network because they have so much Forest Service road, so much other things, where if you look at most counties, we interconnect with state highways, Forest Service roads and all that kind of stuff. Teton County has a unique knot. Uena County, roughly 68% of their roads meet county road standards. So we can go on to the next one. I won't bore you with all of these, but basically what's happening is the county's budgets, because we get a lot of our stuff through property tax, they remain flat. If you look at my total budget for Sweetwater County, I'm 4.6% of the 12 mills that are collected for Sweetwater County. My budgets, I actually sit on another committee, County Road Standards Committee, and we see all the funding that comes in from all the counties. We're very fortunate in Sweetwater County. I will say that the county commissioners have funded our road and bridge, but there's about half the other counties out there that are not. If it wasn't for fuel tax, I don't know how these guys would get anything done. It's almost impossible for them to get anything done because their budgets are so low. If we can go to the next slide, please. This is something I know YDOT's talked to you guys. YDOT's been in front of their transportation several times. Everybody's seen it out there, no matter what you've seen in the presidential debate last year or last couple of days ago. Inflation's going up and materials on roads are going up almost exponentially. Paving asphalt 4 years ago was $300 a ton. It's sitting $1,200 to $1,400 a ton now. That makes up 6%, 4.5% to 6% of a ton of asphalt is what that does. If we can go to the next slide. This is something that we pulled out from, this is Sweetwater County's fuel tax by year. Our 9-year average is $785,000, but you can see from 2019 to 2023, pretty much flat. Our fuel tax hasn't went up. Materials have went up exponentially on that. If you look at the cost of a motor grader back in 2019, it was $250,000. If you ask any road and bridge superintendent, any road county engineer, a motor grader is the diehard workhorse of any department. They plow all the snow, they fix all the roads, they do everything. Motor grader in 2019 was $250,000. Motor grader, Laramie County just had a couple delivered last year. It was $435,000. Culverts have gone up so much in the last fuel budget. Mag chlorides went up from 78 to 109 a ton. Asphalt in Sweetwater County, same overlay, same area that we were doing it in, so the haul was the same. 2016 asphalt was $98, $150 a ton now. This is nothing different than what YDOT's experienced. If you guys have, followed the national news, raw materials, everything's going up, transportation's going up. Our budgets are remaining flat. This is a graph from Park County. Brian did it. And this is the blue line is his accumulation of his county road fund fuel tax money since 2009. Where the line's flat, it's where he was taken out to do little projects out of that. It has taken him approximately 14 years to save money. He will spend all that money in his county road fund on a project next year. It'll get dumped out of there. We do the same thing in Sweetwater County. We save and save and save, do one big project and then save and save and save and do another big project. We'll go to the next slide, please.
Hey, Gene. Mr. Chairman, if I could add something to that. Members of the committee.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to throw out a little bit too with in talking to some of the counties that do have some of these the tighter budgets, which is I'm gonna say a large majority of the counties. Like Gene said, the budgets have remained relatively flat, and what we're seeing, there's many counties they're dipping into the county road fund just so they can replace a motor grader. And if they can't pay for it out of the county road fund or the BROS program or finding some outside sources, I'm gonna say large majority of the counties, they don't budget or, they're struggling with their budget to even do basic maintenance. So you look at like our county, so when you've got 69 bridges, and with the lifespan of a bridge, if you're not replacing a bridge about every year, you're getting falling behind. So, anyway, like Gene said, we're pretty fortunate up here in Park County. But just listening to others across the state, they, with the price of materials and their road and bridge maintenance budgets being relatively constant, cost of equipment, the cost of labor, and the difficulty finding labor, all those factors that have gone up while that maintenance budget has stayed flat. I think it's only a matter of time we're going to see that in the condition of the roads. I think we're already seeing it. But I guess I just wanted to throw that out there. The general feel is that without the outside support, there's many counties across the state that struggle to make capital improvements to the road and bridge system.
Mr. Chairman, if I can add to that, being on the county road standards committee that sees the expenditures from the fuel tax, half of the counties out there are using fuel tax just to pay for culverts, cattle guards, blades. You can't pay for fuel, you can't pay for labor out of that, but it's all their raw materials that needs to go into a road is getting paid out of that. And you can see just in Sweetwater County, it's been flat for 5 years, while costs have went up 40%. This was pulled from YDOT. Sarah Ellis is a great resource for us. She does all the, call it non-traditional funding, TAP funding, CMAQ funding, everything like that. Since 2020 to 2024, that's the total request with total awards in CMAQ. CMAQ is the workhorse of all the unpaved county roads in every single county. Sweetwater County does about 180 to 200 miles of mag chloride a year. Without that, we couldn't sustain the roads. There's tons of studies out there that if you do not mag chloride a road, every 6 to 7 years, you're replacing the base on it because all the fines, because there's traffic, go away and then you just have rock and the road doesn't stay together. So that's the workhorse. This is federal pass through, but it has not went up. It pretty much, Sarah just says it's going to be 2 million until it's not 2 million, it's less. So in Sweetwater County for that, over that same time frame, mags went up 40%. So there we have to dip into fuel tax. We have to dip into county road, a normal county budget line items with that. With that, this is the first picture where I used it. I've used it twice. I don't want to say I used and abused it, but there's no shortage of projects out there. We can do projects every day of the week. Next week, I'm starting on a bridge deck replacement for a bridge that will be replaced in 2028 because currently you can't drive across it. You can see daylight through it. We're going to start replacing the bridge deck next week. This is a great project where, it washed out and they went through and they actually tapered the dishes and stuff like that. And they did great. It was right away crossing, BLM, tribal council, everything. This is what counties do, is they fix roads like this. And with that, I stand for any questions.
Question on you on this one. I see that it required NEPA. What's the threshold that it required NEPA? Was it the total cost of the project? Was it where it was going in? And then on top of that, how much did that add to the project?
I'm going to have to rely on Brian because luckily I've never had to go through the NEPA project on one of mine. So I'll relay to Brian on that one.
Okay. And then I also see we have Representative Berger has a question after this. So Brian, I've got you.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For that particular project, it actually started as far as trying to get that road realigned because it was a pretty severe safety issue because it accesses some public land, some reservoirs and things like that. But it took, even before I got here, I've been with the county 10 years. So there were cultural resource issues, teepee rigs and that kind of thing throughout the area. What drove the need for the NEPA process, the tribal council, was the majority of that road alignment crosses through BLM property, and any sort of because we were changing the alignment, moving outside what was the permitted right of way across BLM, that took a federal action to get to go through the NEPA process, which was pretty lengthy. And like I say, tribal council, a lot lot of involvement. And our local BLM office was great to work with. We're pretty lucky here. But there's no doubt in terms of delaying the project, in terms of adding cost to the project, we had to have an archaeologist that inspected everything and documented where all the cultural resources were before we could design in and create the alignment. And then while we were actually building it, we had to have a archaeologist monitor the work to make sure that we weren't damaging or impacting any cultural resources. So it's part of the deal, and when we're dealing with federal lands, I think we're just used to that. That's just the hoops that you got to jump through. But yeah, we've got good partners up here. But anytime there's federal anything, and I shouldn't say this, but FEMA or anything like that, we've got a federal lands access program project going. And we're actually got a second phase of it. And you know, for the amount of road we could build locally if we were doing it. I'm going to say maybe 25% is what we're able to build. And it's just what we were able to build 4 or 5 years ago, just with the cost of everything that's gone up, we're doing maybe 25% or a third of the amount of road we were able to do just a few years ago. And like I said, a lot of it's just the process, the federal process of getting things done, the way they go about things. And again, hopefully I'm not stepping on any toes, but yeah, it's just a whole different world. If we could see more projects, I think Gene would agree with this, where we can implement them and manage them at the local level, and then have, you know, and state's been very good with that too, but anything we can do locally to administer projects and see them through, it's, I think it saves the taxpayers money. We can get what we need. We're not looking for super highways or Taj Mahal type infrastructure or bridges or something that makes an architectural statement or whatever. You know, that our needs at the county level are a lot simpler. And if we can make those, administer those projects locally, whether we're pretty fortunate, Gene and I, where we've got county engineers on staff, but even the local engineering resources or surveyors, if that's done at the local level and administered, I think you'd get a lot more bang for your buck as taxpayers. So I don't know if that's the appropriate place to put that, but I'll just throw that out there.
Appreciate it, Brian. Thank you. Representative Berger, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And one of you budgets were talked about a lot, and the flatlining of budgets. And one thing we did in the last budget session was we added a lot of money to our local distribution payouts. And correct me if I'm wrong, but those local distributions, yes, they go to cities, but I thought they went to counties as well. So I don't know if any one of you can answer, like the County Commissioners Association can answer, are those monies, was there extra money in the budgets from that piece of legislation when we added to that? I believe it was about 49 million.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, yes, that money did go to the counties. I can't speak specifically for all counties of how they delegated that money out, but yes, that money does go to them and is spread out throughout the county.
And I can speak to that a little bit as far as our county, if I could. And I'm assuming you're talking, a lot of that's funneled through ARPA type dollars and the several, which our county here locally, we did benefit from quite a bit of that money, and it's an incredible amount of money that's out there. But the kind of projects that usually that went to, you know, build a new library in Powell and doing you know, a septic receiving station that we're cooperating with the city of Cody. In terms of road and bridge projects, that what was done, like Gene said, where they're doing a bridge, at least one bridge in every county, they're doing one in our county. That definitely helps. And I don't think any of us are here to say that. I think when it comes to road improvements though, I don't know of any that used those dollars for that type of thing. We like, one of the things we did do is we bought some road materials. We bought some crushed gravel to last us a couple years. So we're definitely grateful for that. I think what the message I think we're trying to say today is we're pretty fortunate where we're at, across the state though, when it comes to maintenance and dollars for maintenance and then capital improvements. There's a lot of counties struggling, I will say that, you know, and like I say, the money that we received did go a long way towards infrastructure, but I'm gonna say a small percentage of that probably went towards roads other than that bridge program.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add to
Please.
that, a lot of this money in Sweetwater County with that went toward buildings, HVAC systems, bringing them up to date, doing different long-term maintenance items. You know, a lot of, I take care of the county facilities also. A lot of the county facilities are 40, 50, 60 years old. You know, and when you start doing it and things like your house, you don't not paint your house every 10 years. You don't replace your shingles every 25 years. You know, and that's where a lot of that money went, because it was what our direction from our county commissioners was, let's use that for a one-term project that will never get done if we don't have this money. So that's what we used it for. Getting back to your other question on NEPA, I've never had to go through the NEPA process, thankfully. On that road that I pointed out where we couldn't go to 65 miles an hour, that's because we were going to have to go through the NEPA process, and there was just no way we're going to do that. We did get a state stockpile yard from YDOT that was on BLM land. There was a known cultural resource on there. There was a known cultural resource on there. Everybody knew where it was. We still had to hire an archaeologist to go out and verify that it was still there. And then we had to fence it off and pay for the archaeologist to watch us fence it off. And we couldn't be on the inside of the fence when we were fencing it off, so we didn't disturb the cultural resource. So that's the kind of stuff that you get into with that. And like I said, I'm very thankful that I haven't had to do it yet.
And never mind, I'm just not gonna go down the RMP right now. We're just not gonna go there with that one. Yep, we're just not gonna go there.
Please don't.
Committee, any further questions on county roads? Or we open this up to public comment?
One statement that I'd like to say is everybody, 2 years ago, we had a great water year. Filled up a lot of our reservoirs, everything like that. A lot of our counties right now, if we have another winter like that, the pushing the snow, the making of the salt sand, the doing stuff like that, and then the subsequent flooding that follows that puts those smaller counties at a huge disadvantage. And they can't do the normal maintenance that they do because we call them budget busters. You know, YDOT was in the same boat. You know, everybody was tired, everybody was drawn out. We had a ton of snow on I-80, a lot of wind blowing. You think you have a great plan, and then all of a sudden the wind comes out of the east and blows it all back on the road that you just moved. So stuff like that are budget busters for us. They're critical. You know, like I said, great water year, everybody needed it. Every reservoir got filled up in the southwest part of the state, but it was tough on road and bridge. So.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you very much. We're going to open this up for public comment. Is there any public comment on county roads? Do we have anybody online for this one? I don't think we do, but we do. Okay. Perfect. Oh, that's right. This is the one that we had today. This was who we had today.
We do have Joel Mina for public comment online.
Yes. Joel, when you can hear us.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, Joel, floor is yours, sir.
Excuse me?
The floor is yours. Or the screen.
I'm from YDOT. I'm for the next segment.
Okay. I was thinking that name did not look right, but and especially with the YOGov, but I appreciate that. And Darren just stood up, so you're all good, Joel. Thank you. Is quite aggressive with the gavel. All right, we're gonna come back to order. And we have our 4 o'clock. And again, Director Bud, this doesn't happen very often in legislative meetings where we're actually an hour ahead of schedule. So I appreciate you being prepared and here for us. So we actually have Office of Homeland Security funding for hazardous materials. We're going to start off with Ms. Hanson. I believe this is your last bill draft of the day. I'm not sure how much typing outside of the bill draft you had to do on top of doing your scripts, but want to tell you we appreciate you. You did a lot of work for us, so thank you. Ms. Hanson, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hanson, Staff Attorney, LSO, presenting Bill Draft 25, LSO 84, version 0.5, hazardous materials reporting fee. The bill draft was requested at the committee's June meeting. I'll start by walking through the bill draft. Section 1 begins on page 1, lines 8 and 9 by amending Wyoming Statute 35-9-153, governing the creation and duties of the State Emergency Response Commission. Page 2, lines 2 through 6 adds a new subsection K, which provides that each facility required to file a Tier 2 report to the Commission under 42 USC Section 11,022 shall pay a fee to the Commission of blank dollars per filing, except that each facility shall not be required to pay more than blank dollars and fees under this subsection per year. The staff comment on page 2 highlights that the committee will need to determine the fee amount per filing and the maximum fee amount per facility. Further, the staff comment highlights that the committee may wish to consider taking a different approach to provide an annual fee amount for each facility. And the committee may also wish to consider whether to impose a penalty for failure to provide the report and pay the fee. Section 2 on page 2, lines 23 and 24 states that this act shall apply to required Tier 2 reports filed on or after July 1st, 2025. Section 3 on page 2, lines 26 and 27 provides that the State Emergency Response Commission shall promulgate all rules necessary to implement this act. Section 4 on page 3, lines 2 through 8 provides a split effective date, with sections 1 and 2 being effective July 1st, 2025, and sections 3 and 4 being effective immediately. And I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hanson. Committee, any questions for Ms. Hanson on the bill itself? Seeing none, thank you so much. We'll turn this over now to Director Bud. Nick, thank you for being here. Appreciate you guys.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee. Lynn Budd with the Director of the Wyoming Office of Homeland Security
and Nick Wardle, Radiological and Hazmat Specialist with the Wyoming Office of Homeland Security.
As discussed at the June meeting, with the reduction in federal grants from Congress, we're looking for support on behalf of the State Emergency Response Commission to fund the software needed to continue to provide an electronic submission portal for Tier 2 submitters and to support in-person meetings of the commission. And thank you to the JEC and legislature for the one-time funding for that support last year. Depending on the level of fee established, the CERC could also look to support the local emergency planning committees, as well as provide matching funds for the hazardous material emergency planning grant. These grants are often used to fund local commodity flow studies, as well as other hazmat activities at the local level. In your packets, you will find a voluminous document with lots of numbers on it, prepared by Mr. Wardle, and I will let him take you through that document quickly.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, sorry for the eye chart. It's a lot of data on one page, I printed off in 4, so mine's a lot smaller. And I didn't have legal size paper. Essentially, I went down and broke it down as we discussed during the June meeting, that we wouldn't be looking at government entities or nonprofits. Eliminating those out of the data, we ended up with about 9,444 facilities that would be required to pay the fee under the bill as it's written. And then kind of just broke that down by the number of facilities that each company has, because the one big thing with the way the wording is in the bill, it does say facility twice, whereas the second use should be company. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a cap because the company or the facility would only be responsible for the initial fee, and that would be the cap for that facility, but the company would be on the hook for each of their facilities. like, for example, the largest company we have at 2,334 facilities across the state of Wyoming. If there's no cap, with a $50 fee per facility, their fee would be $116,700, and that's a little exorbitant. So as we kind of broke it down, I just went across, which is some example numbers of $20, $50, or $100 per facility, and with various caps ranging from $1,000 up to $5,000, and then did keep the 2 columns or the 3 columns with no cap and those fees per facility, just to show the differences in what it would come up with. There's a lot of data there, and I will stand for questions on that.
Committee, anybody want to pick out a particular column and row and ask him about it? Yeah, never mind. I have an accountant on staff here that loves Excel spreadsheets. So, Representative Obermueller.
I came awake. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Column 1, have you broken this down by industry type as to who's actually paying this?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Obermueller, we can, to some extent, break it down by industry type. However, that would require going to like the federal code for each company. The data that we have that would require to go into each tier 2 filing for every facility to find out which federal code they use to figure out what type of industry they are. Based on company type, most of them do stay within their own realm. And we've come up with a very large number that are oil and gas. Somewhere in the neighborhood of about 60% of the companies across Wyoming are oil and gas strictly. Whereas I know that it's exactly 70% that have oil and gas on their tier 2 report, but some of those are not actually oil and gas companies. They just store enough oil or gas to meet that threshold. So we can break it down by industry type to an extent. It's a lot of data to crunch. And a lot of it, I mean, it's 9,600 reports that we'd have to go through each individual one to figure that out. However, I did break it down just by company, with a good majority of those being oil and gas companies.
All right. Any further questions for the department? None? Everybody understands this? Got it? So I've got one. What is, I guess, ultimately the ask? Where do we need to get to that break even point where we say we're not trying to fund up to this so we can expand the programs, but we certainly need X to get us to where we're serving today?
Mr. Chairman, I would say that the column that we were looking at, and it would be a little more than just funding the software and the meetings, would be a column with $50 per facility and a $5,000 cap. Is that right? Column M, which is not on mine, but that would also, again, allow us to support the local emergency planning committees. The software cost by itself was at $57,000. That price has gone up to $64,000 a year. When we are at the point where we will need to go out for, just by contracting and procurement laws with the state, for an RFP to take a look at that again. So I would imagine it's going to be in that range, I hope. And then the additional funds to assist with in-person meetings for the CERC, for the State Emergency Response Commission. As we've seen in many of our other grants, including the hazardous materials emergency planning grant, many times local jurisdictions do not apply for that funding because of the match component. So we would also like to be able to support those applications at the local level by providing the match. So what number? I mean, if you do the $50, that comes up with $218,000 a year. So.
Be 113,000. So.
Okay, committee. Yes, Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on page 2, on line 4 and 6, you have $50 per filing and $5,000 for the cap. And that's going to cover all your expenses except the one you just mentioned. It went from 57 to 64.
Mr. Chairman, Representative O'Hearn, yes, that would cover all of our expenses.
And then I also wanted to verify, Nick, I think you stated and I want to make sure I heard this right. The language that we have, you have facility, but the extra term facility on line 5 needs to be changed to company. Was that right?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay, committee, anything further for the department? All right, thank you guys very much. That's all we have on the docket for bill testifiers on here. Let's go ahead and open this up to public comment. Mr. Detai, welcome. Haven't seen you here in a while.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I was beginning to think you guys didn't love me anymore. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Travis Detai. I'm the Executive Director of the Wyoming Mining Association. And always a pleasure to come and sit before the Transportation Committee. This is my first time during this session, and it's good to be here. Mr. Chairman, I'm also wearing the hat of the Petroleum Association of Wyoming as well. And I will get right into this. We're going to take a nervously neutral position on the bill as written. It's hard to take a position on it until some numbers until you guys do your work and put some numbers in it. But I would say this. The extraction industry pays a lot of taxes, royalties, and fees in this state. Just to throw out some numbers for you, from my members representing the coal, trona, uranium, and bentonite industries, last year in 2023, we paid about $750 million in taxes, royalties, and fees to state and local governments. And our fees in particular, coming from the coal side, paid about $130 million into the black lung fee. All that money goes out of state. We see none of it in Wyoming. We don't have a black lung issue. We pay about $25 million annually into the AML fund. On the oil and gas side, brought in about $4.2 billion in taxes, royalties, and fees. Now, their fees, it's about $4.5 million. So they get a little bit off on the fees. And I just want to kind of leave you with this. Again, neutral on the bill, fully supportive of the program, of my members that file the tier 2 reports. We're a little bit different than oil and gas, where my companies maybe will fill out one annually. Oil and gas, you might have companies that fill out multiple reports, and therefore they're a little bit more anxious about this than some of my members. And my members, I want to say that we're kind of split on it. When discussing the bill earlier, again with no numbers in it, if we're talking about a $40 fee per form, which is my understanding what our neighbors to the south pay. I have members that say, yeah, $40, I got that in my pocket. We can do that. But I also have members that say, no more fees. We're taxed too heavily already. And let's not go down this road of starting to nickel and dime us for this particular issue. And again, supportive of the program, supportive of what they're trying to do. When you look at it again, $2.4 billion from the oil and gas industry. What did I say? 2.4 or 4.2? I can't remember. I got to look at my friend Pete's numbers here. But overall, the extraction industry is paying the bills in the state. We are the taxpayers, over $3 billion worth. And surely, and this is something that we would be supportive of, surely out of over $3 billion that we're contributing to the state annually, you can come up with a few $1,000s to cover the costs of this, and we would be supportive of that. And so, Mr. Chairman, depending on which way the committee wants to go with this bill, we will hold our either support or opposition to it to see what you guys do. But, we do think in general, it's probably more appropriate, to take these costs out of what we're already paying. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything else to add. We'll let you do your work and we'll see where this thing shakes out.
Appreciate it, Travis. Any questions for Mr. Detai? Welcome back home over the range here for you, Mr. Detai. And
it's a good, I don't know if it's a good day to be in Laramie or not today. Anyways, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members. Go Pokes.
Any further public testimony? Please, Mr. Applegate.
Chairman Brown, Chairman Moore, members of the committee. I'm Lanny Applegate. I'm here representing the Wyoming Fire Chiefs. And specifically about one of the interim subjects that you guys started in June in Rock Springs. You discussed it. And that was for the regional response teams, funding for them. If you recall, last budget session, legislature funded half of that at that time and told us to come back. And so we're back, and the regional response team and the Wyoming Fire Chiefs have asked me to follow up and see what the status of that is. That was an interim study that was requested by Director Bud and Chief Jim Walmsley from Rock Springs on behalf of the RERTs.
Randy, I think that was more of a question to us directly, and I think to the chairman and myself, but any questions for Mr. Applegate? Okay, yep, co-chairman.
So, yeah, appreciate you being here and just wondering, yeah, as we gather information on this topic, I know there's also been a broader discussion about emergency medical services, EMS, and some of the challenges associated with making sure we have adequate coverage in rural areas. I suppose that's sort of tangentially related to what you may be interested in. I'm just wondering, as it seems like there could be some consistency here between the two topics. Would you be able to inform the committee what the status is of those discussions? I know we've had some EMS district considerations, things like that. Can you maybe just potentially refresh our memories there?
Mr. Applegate, please.
Chairman Brown, Chairman Boner. I have not been involved with any discussions on the EMS side of that with any of the departments. So I'd be ill-fated to try to respond to that, but thanks for the questions. I would mention that at this time, what I'm hearing, it's anywhere minimum of 2 to 3 years to order a apparatus for replacement. And I know, I understand anyway, there's been some requests sent to Director Buddle, but I'll let her speak to that, of what some of the wishes and wants are from the last funding, and maybe explain where we're at with that.
Okay. Just tangentially after that as well, I just had a discussion with a couple of people with my local fire department, Cheyenne Fire and Rescue, and a couple of their concerns were a pumper that they were working with was $400,000 when they ordered it. When it was delivered, it was $850,000. And so these are some of the same things that we're seeing with county roads and everything else out there. It's just the prices of everything have gone through the roof. But
they're looking at anywhere from 850,000 to 1.3 million.
So Director Bud, welcome back to the table.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, so kind of a progress report. We have met with all of the administrators for the regional response teams to help them evaluate and prioritize the equipment needs with the funding provided. We are working through, as far as the regional response teams equipment requests, as you know, those were the largest requests. We are estimating costs for that for each team at 1.5 million at this point in time. We have an RFP that should be going out tomorrow with regard to the procurement of those types of equipment. With that type of money, we need to go out and make sure we get the correct supplier for that. The team of RERT administrators prioritized the first purchase to go to Regional Response Team 3, which happens to cover the area we are in, mostly because their equipment is not appropriate for dealing with the snow and ice on the highway at this point in time for those types of rescues and responses. Once we get the RFP, the results of the RFP, we'll be looking at purchasing that. The other complicating part of this is that some regional response teams respond to different types of incidents. So there may be some differences in equipment needs. We are planning on taking this through at the priorities that were established so that we are sure we don't overspend.
Can you remind the committee, Director Bud, what the original appropriation was for half the funding? Do you have that off the top of your head?
I believe the regional response teams was 4 million.
4 million.
Mm-hmm.
It was 4 million for Mr. Chairman. It's 4 million for the regional response teams
And
and 1.5, I believe, for the bomb squads.
Yeah. So we also met with the bomb squads separately, even though they're nested under the regional response teams. We looked at them, at they prioritizing their needs and what was immediate needs for their safety, as well as more long-term higher dollar needs. At the same time, we were looking at expending the remainder of our 2020 State Homeland Security Grant. We do not like to turn back federal money. So I always have to brag, my financial person has the record for returning $1.42 on one of our grants. So we like to try and spend that money. So some of those immediate needs for the bomb teams, we actually used that Homeland Security Grant to pay for those, about $275,000 on that. And then we'll be looking at their suits and robots, those larger expenditures with that additional funding that's been provided.
All right. Mr. Applegate, anything further?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just to let you know, there currently are 8 different regional response teams across the state of Wyoming. And Director Bud, can you list the 8 of them?
Where they're located?
Yeah, where they're located? I can
Yes.
most of you can catch the slack.
Absolutely. So Regional Response Team 1 is they just cover multiple counties and they're geographically located. 1 is in the northeast corner, 2 is kind of in the middle of the state, 3 is Albany County, based out of Albany County, covers Albany and Lincoln, I believe, or Albany, Carbon. Yeah, thank you for that. And then 4 is in the Rock Springs area, 5 is in the middle of the state, Fremont County-ish. 6 is in come out of Washakie County, and 7 is out of Cheyenne, and 8 is out of Teton County.
So she passed the test there, Lanny.
They're pretty darn well. So, and then, Mr. Chairman, I'm told via telephone text that there's a couple people online that's listening in, a couple of the fire chiefs, one from Laramie, one from Rock Springs, and they don't know if they can log in or not. So I'll leave that up to you guys.
I'm getting the head shake from Eve that we have them in, so we'll go ahead and let them in as well.
Mr. Chairman, we have James Wamsley to present. He is one of the chiefs.
Yeah, just give me a.
Ramsley?
Yeah. Yeah. Chairman Brown, Chairman.
Bonner.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I recognize you now.
My apologies. The lights just went off in the room we're at. They're motion activated. Apparently I sat still too long. I'm here. I've got Chief Dan Johnson from Laramie Fire Department. We are the hosts of RERT 4 in Rock Springs and RERT 3 in Laramie, respectively. I'm also the chair of the State Emergency Response Commission, and I would just like to make remarks in support of Director Bud's comments regarding the Tier 2 reporting costs. One of the things, or one of the areas where we suffered the most in the State Emergency Response Commission during COVID was the inability to meet in person. The funding that we had previous to that was taken away during COVID. It was restored partially recently. However, the effectiveness that we've experienced since we began meeting in person again earlier this spring has really re-energized the State Emergency Response Commission. It allows us to meet as a commission face to face along with the local emergency management coordinators in each county. I do understand the trepidation of some of our industry partners. However, the greater importance is to consider how spills affect and how coordination matters when a local community experiences a large scale hazmat spill or other emergency that requires the services of the regional emergency response teams. In addition to that, I would speak to the vehicles for the RERT, vehicles and equipment for the regional emergency response teams, as well as the equipment for the bomb squads. In many cases, this equipment was purchased in the wake of 9/11 when there was copious grant funding. Those pieces of equipment in many cases have since expired or reached the end of their useful life or no longer supported by the manufacturer. There are new technologies that are coming on board with regard to the equipment that better serve the mission of dealing with explosives or with monitoring and detecting hazardous materials. In regards to the vehicles, the original tractor trailers are now almost 20 years old. And in most cases don't actually fit the bill. It was what was handy at the time, and we've made do with them, but now they are also reaching the end of their life and are in need of replacement. That's the comments that I have. Before I turn the time over to Chief Johnson, I would ask if there are any questions for me.
Any questions from the committee? I've got one for you. If not, Chief Walmsley, was it yourself or the other chief that was responsible for the, granted, it wasn't an industry fuel spill, but the jet fuel that spilled outside of Wamsutter a couple of weeks ago? Did one of the regional response teams communicate with that? And then also I hear that was me on the other side. So I am curious, as well as the truck fire that shut down I-80. Those just seem to be seems to be two of the most recent topics that I can think of that the RERTs were called into action. I'm just curious whose it was and what type of equipment and what type of expertise was needed out of that. And, you know, if we don't follow through with this funding, what would that have meant for that situation?
Well, I was not called to either of those incidents. The second one, the one last weekend, the unfortunate one that closed the interstate, was a semi-fire. To my knowledge, I don't believe a regional emergency response was activated. Regarding the fuel spill, we were not called out. And I don't believe Chief Johnson was called to that one either. I believe the local fire department dealt with that with the spiller. The way the regional emergency response team program works, we're a state asset. We've been funded through the Office of Homeland Security since 2005. And we are a resource that local fire departments have the ability to call up. So if a local fire department believes that they can handle the emergency at hand, they generally will not reach out to us. However, particularly in the case of some of the more remote areas where they have a small volunteer contingency to serve the community, they quickly run out of resources, and generally they will call for the capabilities of detecting what's there, helping contain what's there. And again, we're a resource. We don't come in to take over the incident. We just come in to help mitigate what's going on in cooperation with the local authorities. I don't know that that answered your question, other than to say that I wasn't part of it.
That actually answered my question perfectly, so I appreciate it. All right, we can turn it over to your counterpart there if you'd like.
Certainly, thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm Dan Johnson, Fire Chief of the City of Laramie Fire Department. We're also a host for Regional Emergency Response Team number 3. As Chief Walmsley said, our equipment is 2004 for the apparatus that we run. We have a tractor trailer set up. Our partners, close partners, we work very close with City of Rawlins Fire and Carbon County Fire with training and equipping. So because sometimes we can't make it over to the mountain to there due to the conditions, but they're part of our team also. So if you have any questions, I don't have much more to add. What Chief Walmsley said pretty much covered the makeup of the team. I stand for questions.
Brady, any questions? Seeing none, appreciate your time and appreciate you guys zooming in. Appreciate you guys taking time out of your busy days. Yes, Director Brett.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to just provide some additional information with regard to the equipment. The sort of agreement with the local fire departments for housing the equipment, housing the teams, and making sure that they're available for response as a state team, is the ability for them to also utilize that equipment for non-activated regional response team activations. So the fire department has that equipment available to them. The activation is important for indemnification and liability concerns. So that's kind of the trade-off. You take care of the equipment and make sure that it stays in working order, then you can use that if you need it at the time.
Excellent. All right, thank you so much. Mr. Applegate, anything further?
Mr. Chairman, I'll just finish on behalf of the Wyoming Fire Service and the citizens of Wyoming that we would certainly appreciate your consideration of continued funding for the equipment that's in front of you. So with that, thank you for all your support over the years.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you, Lenny. All right, and then I also have, I actually have everybody left on here. So is Keith Kennedy still on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's go ahead and let Keith in, please.
Mr. Kennedy is online, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Kennedy, when you are ready, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me? And I think my bandwidth may be a bit small, so I'll forego the video for the time being.
That is perfect. Perfectly fine. We can hear you just fine, Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Keith Kennedy on behalf of the Wyoming Ag Business Association. A few other things for you to consider as you deal with this. And on behalf of our members, we have actually filed Tier 2 reports in several other states as well as Wyoming. And based on some of the risks that are involved, it might make sense for you to charge for certain items that may be on a report, such as what are called EHS materials, environmental health safety issues, which in general would probably pose more risk for first responders. This may be a way that you could tier these fees to the risk that might be associated with various things. Beyond that, I would also point out that many of the responses that these teams need to make are actually things that are in transit that wouldn't show up on a Tier 2 report from a fixed facility. And I think it's worthwhile in the future for us to think about some way to augment this somehow. And I would hazard a guess, pardon the pun, that many of these issues arise on Interstate 80, where we have a great deal of material that may be in transit. And with that, I'd welcome your questions.
Committee, any questions for Mr. Kennedy? Mr. Kennedy, appreciate you being here with us today. No questions from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also have Alan Thompson. We can allow Alan in, please. All right. Mr. Thompson, when you are ready, sir, we're ready to hear from you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. My name is Alan Thompson with the Wyoming Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police, and I was just available today if there was any questions about the RERTs and funding. I don't have anything to add to it, and I appreciate the consideration and the opportunity to be here today.
All right, appreciate that. Committee, any questions directly for the Chiefs of Police and Sheriffs? Seeing none, thank you very much for sticking through with us. Appreciate that. And then I also have Carrie, but I also had Carrie on here multiple times. Is Carrie available? All right. So any other further public comment? Seeing none, going once, twice, we will close public comment. Committee, we have a bill before us. What's the committee's pleasure on this particular bill as we look at this, as we've heard the testimony? What's your pleasure? Anybody? Nothing? Okay. Opportunity here is there's also the discussion that we also heard about the RERT funding. Co-chairman and I kind of noodled heads here in the middle of this and thought maybe a potential topic is to have us as the chairman send a letter to the Appropriations Committee with a recommendation to potentially, instead of charging any of these funds or anything like this, fund this out of the general fund. What's the committee's feelings on something along those lines? Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I took particular interest in Mr. Is it Dedi?
DTI.
Thank you. On his comments. And I particularly agree with a lot of what he said. These particular industries are already pretty heavily taxed. And his plea, if I remember right, was can we find maybe somewhere a little bit of slack in what you've already collected and figure out how to pay for this? And I would just simply add to that, you don't tax a business or an industry. You tax the customers of the same. So we call it a fee, but it's still a tax. And before we go about raising taxes, let's just make sure that we're doing the very best we can with what we already have. And so I appreciate your suggestion. If the general fund has a tremendous amount of buildup of reserve, then before we go raise fees and taxes, maybe we take what we've already collected and redistribute that. This type of program, this equipment needs to be the very best that we can have. It is critically important to us, but we have the money.
All right, committee, anything further? Yes, Mr. Co-Chair.
I could probably use a refresher, maybe the committee could as well. Director Bud, what is the need for was the funding need, both one time for equipment and ongoing? Just if you could give us a bit of a refresher here, if you don't have a chance.
I'm going to get your steps in yet.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. The original ask was 8 million for the regional response teams and 3 million for the bomb teams. And that was based on an estimate of each regional response team receiving a new piece of equipment at $1 million. We know that's going to be more now. So I would suggest that that figure to outfit all of the teams may be higher than we anticipated.
Follow up.
And so would that be more of a one-time, we need some equipment now? And then, or would that be ongoing every year? They need that sort of funding?
Yep, Mr. Co-Chair, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair. I see this as a one-time boost to that, but I also would think about an ongoing funding line item to continue to support those teams with grant funds decreasing. Again, at the time the teams were created, we were receiving between 17 and 18 million dollars in Homeland Security funding. We now receive 4.5 million. So, and that grant covers law enforcement, all sorts of other needs. So if we could support our regional response teams with some, a budget figure, that'd be fantastic.
Okay. Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a general question about the cooperation between in the regions and those counties in said regions. Is there any numbers you could supply that would show what is going on with the, like, how are they cooperating fiscally, or maybe there's some in-kind issues with storage? I don't know. I mean, you alluded to the fact that they do utilize the equipment. And so I think it benefits everybody. So I just wondered if maybe you could, maybe I don't know, put you on the spot right now, but get some data that shows that cooperation. If I assume there is some, I just don't know what the numbers are, what they look like. That was my question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, I do not have those figures off the top of my head, but I'd be happy to see what we can provide and pull together for the committee.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Committee, any further discussion on the proposed ideology or the proposed topic? And I think what we would do is probably have this drafted as a proposed letter to bring forward for your guys' consideration at our next meeting. And this would be pretty much a up or down vote, not really anything other than that, but it would have the figures in it that we've all discussed, would have the RERT funding in it, as well as in a general fund appropriation for the software for the tier 2 filings. Any other questions on that? And we'll have that. I'll make that chairman's prerogative just to have that drafted for our next meeting, and then we'll discuss whether or not we send that as a committee. Mr. Co-Chair.
And Mr. Chairman, just feel like, maybe there's a little bit more we could look into also, and just throwing this out there for the committee. you know, we heard how we used to have more federal funding that's going away. We hear, I think the testimony from the Mining Association and Petroleum Association is compelling in that we all, you know, reassess severance taxes, certainly on those industries, and that's a significant amount of revenue. I wonder if we might also maybe consider some bill drafts that would look at either our federal mineral royalty revenue distributions as well as our severance tax distributions. And just the way I understand that works is, you know, with FMRs, you have a set amount that goes to different entities under the 2 million or 200 million mark, similar construct for severance taxes, 155. I wonder if we might just consider increasing either or of those distributions. Say they need $4 million and using FMRs, let's say it's $204 million and add $4 million worth of funding for Homeland Security, and you do it that way. So we'd effectively be diverting funds most years out of both the general fund and the school fund. And that would be the effect. We'd be taking from those revenue streams and providing a more steady revenue stream for this Black Serbia basic functioning government. So could be another bill draft we get going and probably get us in a lot of trouble with our appropriators, but you know, we're here to I feel like we haven't quite done enough work on this one. If we, you know, if we leave it with a letter to appropriations. So that's what I like to throw out for the committee's consideration, but certainly open to other suggestions as well.
Any thoughts? Anybody want to make that motion to have those drafted?
I make the motion.
Okay, I have a motion to have at least, I'm not quite sure. I think what we'll probably do is have which one and or if not both of those. It sounds to me like it's kind of two. Okay.
Second?
Yeah, maybe we just.
And
Okay.
seconded. All right, there we go.
Cool.
Feel like God's talking to us, Representative Berger. All right, if you can, Talise has kind of given me this puzzled look, like clean this up, so.
Yeah, so if with leeway, Mr. Chairman, maybe for the bill draft, we just, so we have everything out there, just have both FMRs and severance taxes with that concept of increasing the cap and adding, and maybe we'll just leave it blank for now. Increase it by a certain amount and then add a distribution to Homeland Security for these purposes in the same amount. So we're not changing anybody's distribution under the cap or anything like that, but we would be effectively diverting those funds from general fund and school foundation program in different amounts, depending on whether it's FMRs or severance tax, different proportions based off those revenue streams. But that'd be the basic decision the committee has, and basically earmarking those funds for this purpose. So that's, hopefully that makes a little bit more sense, Mr. Chairman.
I'm getting the head shake from LSO committee. Is there any further discussion on this? I personally have, I'm reticent to support this. I certainly understand the ideology behind this. The diversions, when we started talking about FMRs, we're about ready to hear here in just a few minutes about FMRs and the recent past of what FMRs used to fund and what a benefit those were to our state agency that takes care of our roads. So I'm reticent to go against diverting FMRs and then also the cap with severance taxes. Every time we start doing that, our appropriators, now granted, we may have a completely different set of appropriators and that may change dramatically. But I will say that personally, I'm not a big fan of going in and meddling with those for smaller amounts like this. I think that's a much larger discussion to be had. And I certainly think what we're hearing right now is this is a one-time ask up front. Certainly we have some extenuating circumstances that still need to have some funding, but I think these are things that we can put some money into up front. And the longer we push this out, it's going to continue to cost us. And I don't disagree with that from the co-chairman's point of view, but I personally will be a no vote on drafting these. So any other further comments? Okay, all those in favor of the two bill draft motion here, by O'Hearn and seconded by Representative Berger out of Wonderland out there. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, no?
No.
Let's do a hand. Go ahead and raise your hand for the ayes, please. Got 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? Oh, 5. I have 5. Berger, I got you. 1, 2, 3. You're no?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no.
Go join us. Join us.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I'll be 8. So those bill drafts fail. Okay. Committee, anything further on Homeland Security, funding and hazardous materials at this point? Okay, I do want to go back and I would like to open up any committee directives on county roads since we're doing committee directives right now. Is there any discussion on or from the committee on directives for county roads, specifically when it comes to either the maintenance and or speed limits? Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would propose a bill draft that would change flexibility to the county road speed limits from the 55 to allow it to go from 45 to 55 without a speed study. And to give them that flexibility locally. That would be my proposal, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we've got a motion seconded by O'Hearn. Any discussion on that? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of this bill motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Okay, that bill draft passes. We're gonna have a really long meeting in November, folks, just giving you the heads up. We're gonna have about 5 bills so far, so.
We lost 2 earlier.
That's true. All right, Senator Kolb, anything further?
No, I feel good about
Okay.
about that change. I'll let someone else propose one, Mr. Chair.
Anybody else on county roads? If not, we're gonna close that topic again after reopening it, and that is going to move us about an hour and 15 minutes ahead of schedule. And I think that gives us just enough time to open up the can of worms on YDOT funding. So we are gonna go ahead and get that started. So we'll go ahead and let everybody get situated. Bring YDOT forward. Yes, please. Just a brief overview will work, Donna. All right, and we're gonna give Talise a little bit of a break. And we're gonna go to our other LSO staff and Miss Donna Shippen.
Hi, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. The chairman requested that LSO look at how other states fund their transportation costs and also what other revenue sources other states have come up with in light of declining fuel tax revenues. And so there's a short report in your meeting materials. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through the entire report. I think the executive summary and the table that appears on pages 3 and 4 of the report provides a good overview of the 11 different revenue sources that LSO identified. And we did reach out to YDOT and they were very helpful in providing revenue estimates for each of those 11 possibilities. So if you have any questions, please let me know, but I'll then turn it over to YDOT.
Okay. Committee, this was a very well put together report. Thank you, Donna, for all the information in here. Is there any specific questions on this report for Donna? Did y'all read it? Nobody's looking me in the eye. All right, Darren and team, please join us up front here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I too Darren Westby, Director of WIDOT, I want to thank Donna and her team. It's a lot of work to research what other states do and then try to tie it back to how it could potentially work within our state. As you can imagine, every state's a little different on how they fund different things. Every state has a different collection of revenue, which is usually different than our state. And so the dichotomy there is really impressive. And so I hats off to you for piecing it together.
Just a second.
Right, sorry, I actually do have a question. It's moving a little quick for me, but
Oh,
I
that's
found
okay.
it. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so looking at page 11, talk about sales taxes on vehicles. And, it just seems like that's a fairly significant amount of money and something that may be kind of unusual. Do you see just how many other states do it this way, where sales tax on vehicles does not go to the highway fund? Instead, we treat like sales tax with anything else? Yeah, any, lots, a little bit more information would be helpful, I think.
Ms. Shippen?
Okay, Mr. Chairman and Senator Boner, I didn't look at individual states. I instead looked at aggregate data for how states fund transportation costs. That data came from the National Association of State Budget Officers. But I did see, and you can, let's see, if you look at the pie chart on page 7 of the report, that shows that aggregate data. And so if you're looking at all states combined, and this pie chart is just showing sources of revenue for the state portion of transportation funds. And about 11% of that state portion comes from vehicle sales and use tax. We do collect that tax here in Wyoming, but it's not distributed to WYDOT. I did reach out to the Department of Revenue, and they gave me the estimate that about $62 to $65 million is what the state portion of the vehicle sales and use tax is, that currently goes into the general fund.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, now we'll let you talk, Director.
Well, thank you again. Kudos. It's a deep dive. And with me today, I have my CFO for the deeper dive that you guys might take to help me out. He's got backup as well, our budget manager. And then I have my deputy director, Taylor, in the back in case I get stumped on some policy stuff. And I know John Davis is back here, and Chief Gillette, you already met. So thank you again. You know, what this memo did, hopefully, is either open your eyes to some options, some policy decisions that y'all make. We're going to bring later a few more. You touched on a few of them with that severance and FMRs. Our county has said that as well. Representatives from the county have said that as well. In our packet that we submitted, there's, I don't know, at least for this topic, I think there's 11 different tabs in there for you to peruse, and I'll try to touch on them as I go through my presentation. But really want to talk about, our impact. You heard a lot about it from the counties, and I think you all probably drove here and either felt some good impact or some bad impact. But WYDOT is charged with one of Wyoming's largest investments that we've made to date. We have the, albeit a small in mission, provide a safe and effective transportation system. That's a small written mission, but it's hugely impactful and very important to our state's economy and well-being. I know I've talked to you guys before a little bit about this, but and you know this as well as legislators, the 3 largest revenue streams for the state is the extractive energy industry, tourism, and shortly behind that is agriculture. Well, without a true mission success with our agency, those 3 large revenue generating industries wouldn't be as successful. And so continuing down the importance and the impact of our industry, transportation, is truly the opportunity for us to invest in and protect our investment and invest more to try to improve what we have going on in infrastructure, regardless of whether it's horizontal roads, water, sewer. All of those infrastructures are important. They spark economic growth, they create jobs, and for most of them, they improve your quality of life. If you don't have water, that is the life being, right? And so you get up in the morning and you can't get to work because your roads are not passable. That's very impactful. And so I selfishly, I'm gonna probably revert mostly to the horizontal construction of roads, but infrastructure as a whole is significant to our well-being. Somewhere along the line, and I'm still relatively new, but from outsider looking in, I've had the opportunity to really look at infrastructure in a different light. Somewhere along the line, infrastructure has become a back of the mind kind of passive impact. It's an expectation. However, those expectations still require investment in maintaining, protecting that investment, and then also looking at what that impact could be better if we improve that expectation. And so what I'd like to do is continue to bring the importance of infrastructure to the top of mind, that opportunity to not instill fear of if this, then this. That's not what I'm trying to do from a bad perspective. If we don't fund infrastructure, the world's going to come to an end. That's not where I want to go with this. I want to take it to the positive side. If we maintain our infrastructure at a level that we should, we can all benefit from it. If we can improve our infrastructure, we can all benefit from it. Not just in those 3 revenue streams that I just talked about, but everybody's quality of life, everybody's individual businesses that requires the use of the transportation system. And so I appreciate the conversation. What we see is our charge at the transportation department is we need to properly manage and protect Wyoming's infrastructure and the investment that we've made in it. We need to improve the safety of the people traveling on our roads and the people that work on our roads. We need to prepare for and improve capacity for current and future use and the growth. We need to maintain the buying power so we can stretch how far we can go with the dollar. And truly, if we can do all this, we will improve our level of service to our customers. And that begs another question. What is that level of service? What do we want our level of service to be? What do we consider as good and we can check the box? Is that a level of maintenance? Is that a level of improvement? All those things that I think we need to look internally as well as you all is what is that level of service we're willing to invest in? So how do we get there? We've talked about it a lot. I know I've talked to a lot of you together as well as individually. We've seen a total revenue increase, but it's all been from the federal side. So we feel that where we need to really look at is the stateside funding. We need increased stateside funding that is in a long-term trajectory. That's more or less your guys' role, right? You're the policymakers. We are continuously working at the federal level with our current local delegation, but also we're spending quite a bit of time in DC talking to other Congress people that will help us perpetuate the funding coming from the federal government for infrastructure. That's their role. And so we're working two fronts here to ensure that we can have the revenues that we need to be successful. Within the packet that LSO and Donna provided, it talked a little bit about the funding percentages, how much we're state and federally funded. WYDOT, just from the highway side, in the report, it shows roughly about a 50-50. That's agency wide. If you look at WYDOT as a whole, we're about 50% federally funded, 50% state funded. If you look at just the highway system itself, we're 65-70% federally funded. And so, which, depending on how you feel about that, it's not bad. But however, when we've seen the last 15 years, basically flat state revenue, increasing federal revenue, for the last 2.5 years, we've been fortunate enough to see about $100 million a year increase from the federal government. with the last transportation bill. This year, we saw a $30 million reduction, so we're about $70 million increase, which is still good. About a 30% increase in federal funding. However, we saw, as you heard from the county prior, we were also seeing 45–50% increase in costs. And so thank goodness we saw that increase in the federal dollar that came in. Otherwise, we'd be going backwards even more. And so when you couple our revenue streams, whether it's state or federal, that buying power is the piece that's really probably nipping us harder in the backside than anything else. Not just the standard inflation that everybody gets to see, but we get to enjoy the construction inflation, which is quite significant. You heard some numbers from the county. I'll just throw one more out, just that they didn't mention, was just unclassified excavation, just dirt moving dirt has gone up 600%. That's significant. Now, I can go into a little bit more about why we feel that some of those construction inflationary pieces are there. I might leave some of it to our Contractors Association that might be able to come back tomorrow and testify, because I haven't seen them roll up today. But it's significant. Total revenue, I already talked about. Sorry, I bounced around a little bit, Mr. Chairman. One thing I want to, I guess, remind everybody about is federal funds that we received. So we received a significant amount of federal funds, but those federal funds are geared towards only being able to be used for certain things. So we can use federal funds for planning, road construction, and safety. So we can take a little bit off the top for overhead, about 10% for that, but the balance can't be used for regular maintenance, can't be used for snow plowing, can't be used for fixing potholes, can't be used for fixing fence or guardrail, just general operations. We cannot use the federal dollar for that. We can't use it on our buildings. Now, we might be able to go get a discretionary grant or some special grant to help build portion of a building if we're going to do that, but it won't, it can't be used for ongoing maintenance, major maintenance, any other capital improvement. Definitely can't really be used for equipment that we're using that as for as well. And so, and then we, when we assign a project, so we're going to design a project with the federal funds, we can bill towards that, our labor. But that's, if you look at it, it's about 25% of our labor costs. So the other 75% of the labor cost comes out of the state side. So, and I know in the charts, you guys probably saw the funding charts, stateside funding charts. And then I know just at the last couple of days, we submitted a total revenue trend. So you can see the total revenue is going up, but if you couple that with buying power, it's not. And then you flip to the stateside map, or graph, I can't remember which one that is. I think that's 1203. Yeah, 1203. That's the stateside revenue history. From, we had a peak in 2008. Significant amount of general funds were added to the budget at 2008, but I think we can all understand what happened in around the 2008 timeframe. The Great Recession happened, and I think the foresight of knowing that those general funds were going to start going down significantly, coupled with some buying power issues. Very grateful. I'm going to put a heck of a nod towards everybody in WYDOT that had the foresight to understand that we're not going to be in the same revenue situation that we were at. And they went into what they called preservation only mode, which we're going to use what we have to protect and maintain what we have. Very prioritized wise, did not look at very many expansion capacity increases unless it was absolutely necessary. Really focused on what we had to maintain, spread that peanut butter as far as we could to ensure that our transportation system was passable to the level that we could. As some of you have already alluded to me today, there are some roads that could use some help, and we're not disagreeing with you. But from a prioritization standpoint, it's what we can do. If you think about it, we are charged, we are given a significant amount of federal dollars. Therefore, we need to, at a priority level, focus on the levels that the highway system, the interstate system, and the national highway system, interstate system and the national highway system that's within the state of Wyoming. Everything else, then we can go towards and spread that out into our state highway systems. You know, so again, outsider looking in, I walk in and I go, all right, so what was our exit strategy? You know, what was our exit strategy to come out of preservation only mode? What is it going to take? What is it, you know, what do we need to do internally? What do we need to bring to this body to try to improve our situation? And it truly did come down to stateside funding, because they're working hard on the national level to keep up with the inflation. We're not keeping up with inflation. Obviously, if we're going stagnant for the last 15 years, flat for the last 15 years, inflation's gone up. I don't probably need to go into too much more of that, but really, that's where we're going to focus our energy with you all to see what we can do to move that forward. So what does long-term sustainable funding look like, and what does it do for us? Obviously, it improves our buying power. We can maintain more roads. We can improve more roads. We can improve the safety of some of our roads, minimizes the risk of the federal funds. You know, I talked a little bit about where we've already seen a $30 million haircut this year from the federal disbursement. I'll give you a little bit of education on where the federal funds come from. The National Highway Trust Fund is populated revenue-wise by fuel tax, and we all know where fuel tax is going. Fuel tax is continuing to go down. Well, there's still a need to maintain our infrastructure out there throughout the country, and so they backfill that with general funds. Well, we all know that is not a sustainable practice. And so we are trying to, again, look into the crystal ball. It doesn't take that big of a genius. I'm not saying we're that smart, but we do know that we will probably be seeing a decrease in federal funds. We'll be happy if we just maintain where we're at right now, to be honest with you. But we're going to fight like heck to try to ensure that we're at least maintaining our federal side and see where we go from there. It gives us the ability to make good, sound engineering decisions, doing what's best versus what we can afford. You know, 30, 40 years ago when they were doing the roads, they were completely reconstructing the roads to a level that could last 20 years without having to come back and do a shave and pave or do what we're doing. I call it lipstick in it, right? So that's not a really good term, but it truly is. If you driven on a road that's black and fresh stripe paint, you think, wow, this is a new road. And then sometimes you go, why is the road still doing this? Well, all we did was put a surface coating on it to make that material last another 5 years, maybe. Just cross our fingers in hopes that it works. And so hopefully, if we can start, if we had the appropriate funding, we would be able to do more life cycle cost decision based. So if a stretch of road could be reconstructed and we wouldn't have to touch that road in 20, 21 years versus we do a mill and overlay and we have to come back in 7 years. Well, 7 years down the road, that same mill and overlay is going to cost quite a bit more. And then you come back in another 7 years, it's going to cost quite a bit more. Well, what is the coming back on that same stretch of road 3 times in 21 years versus doing it appropriately the first time, if it's warranted, and not have to touch that in another 20, 21 years? Does that make more sense? Well, we don't have the big dollars right now, but we have a smaller dollar, so we just spread that out a little bit further. So making the wiser decisions is gives, you know, having a little bit more money gives us the ability to make better decisions. It gives us the ability to improve our system where growth is appropriate. You start looking at capacity issues that we're going in right now. I just look at the 4 corners of our state and what's happening in there. Southwest Wyoming's, I won't say blowing up, it's getting impressive what's going on down there. Not only the energy, but the other extractive industries. We got the nuclear coming in. So it's pretty impressive what's going down there. Southeast Wyoming, same thing. I mean, we're seeing industry rolling in there. I-80, I-25 interchange is going to be one that I'll be coming to you in the next several years to start helping me fund our half of the match to get that intersection done. Wind River Canyon, you know, that's we got to study some funds to do a study, a resiliency study to get us. You imagine if that canyon goes down, it's a 4.5 hour detour to get from Shoshone to Thermopolis, at least. It's significant. Climbing lanes. How many have been on I-80 behind two tractor trailers and you can't get up the hill? Getting some passing lanes in their climbing lanes, I should say. Safety improvements. You know, I think we talked in this committee about what transpired just south of here on 287 when we were talking about this interim topic, and getting some more safety improvements out there with this road. There's several roads out there. Highway 59, I could go on for days about what we could do up there. Wider shoulders. It's amazing. Very few, I shouldn't say nobody, very few will send us an email or pick up a phone call and say your wider shoulder saved our lives. But you think about some distracted driving, maybe a little tired driving, the rumble strips woke me up. Well, if that shoulder is only 3 foot wide and you hit that rumble strip, well, you probably don't have enough time to correct yourself back up. But having that wider shoulder, we did get an email from an individual who it took probably a couple of years before we saw that email come through. But they felt compelled after a certain time to really think it through and wrote us a really nice email saying, I wished I would have done this sooner, but I want you to know what you did. And their wider shoulders did save their lives. You know, you start thinking about a little, instead of a really steep slope off of a highway, broadening that or widening off that slope coming off could help save a life as well. I'll talk a little bit about construction inflation. If we can appropriately plan out our construction season with more dollars, these construction companies could then go out and create more jobs, create 2 or 3 more crews, buy a crane, buy a new paver, start planning ahead. Where if it's short term, like we have a big influx of dollars today and we can go do a lot of work today, they're probably not going to go buy a new crane. They're probably just going to spread that crane as far as they can. That new paver is just going to be on a semi more than it's probably on the ground paving. And they're probably not going to be able to afford to hire more crews. So what they do is they pay overtime. They send those crews everywhere, work them for 6 months straight, and then lay them off for 6 months and then hire them back for 6 months straight. Whereas if we had a little bit more funding and planning, we can spread that out and create more opportunities for them in hopes that that could decrease some of that construction inflation that we're seeing. Quick switch. I talked a little bit about the vertical infrastructure that we have. And I know the county talked about it as well. You have to prioritize the funding that you have. And when you go into preservation mode, where do you think your vertical construction, your buildings, all that stuff, it gets fallen. It probably gets a little bit lower on your priority list because nobody's going to call and complain that your roof's leaking in Shoshone or wherever. But they'll call and complain that the road's not being maintained right. So selfishly, self-preservation wise, we chose to prioritize our buildings down below where they probably should have been. Well, now the bills come and due now, right? So we now have to prioritize those facilities before we completely lose them. Well, that just continues to take more money off the roads. I know Mark, we sit in meetings on a regular basis when we have these prioritization conversations. He goes, well, there goes another project. It's just you're taking it off the roads. Well, at some point we have to make that decision. We're fortunate enough.
Hold on just a second. Got a question here from Co-Chairman.
Yeah, so with vertical construction for your facilities, I know the Appropriations Committee is looking at perhaps including you into the state capital construction process. Maybe just fill in the committee as to where those discussions are at and what the possibilities are there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Co-chairman, thank you. You led right into my next bullet point. So you're clairvoyant in my papers here. So we are fortunate. We have been asked, and I think fortunate, I'll say we played our own luck a little bit. We saw the need to have a solid plan going forward. Again, just like you all, you want to see what we're going to do, why we're going to do it before we can expect any outcome from y'all. And so what we did, we went about a year ago, we started looking at, maybe over a year ago, starting to look at a facility improvement plan and putting a 20-year strategic plan in place that we can help kind of guide us in where we're going to place the funds in which we have, whether it's $1 million or $10 million, we'll have a plan and how we're going to spend it. And it just might shorten or lengthen how long it's going to take us to get to where we're going to be or where we need to be. And so we talked to the state building department as well as some members on the JAC, and they're now working with the state building department to put together a strategic plan for all of the state buildings as well. And with that, they've invited us to come have a conversation with them to talk about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and where we see the outcome being beneficial to the state. With that, we are going to take our opportunity to stick our nose under the tent and talk to them about our needs, about possibly getting on the state construction bill as well, the Capcom bill, as well as the conversation about getting in the major maintenance formula. And so both of those have opportunities to alleviate some of our funding, not only on the major maintenance side, but any future capital construction as well. So thank you for that. And we're very grateful that we're getting that opportunity. And I know it's probably not just our conversation. There's probably several conversations in the background that help that along. So whoever's listening and those sitting at the table, thank you for getting us in that door. So, you know, I truly do get the conundrum, you know, road maintenance, roads aren't sexy. I'm trying to bring it back in my agency, trying to understand that infrastructure can be. There's, you know, every time we build a new road or if we do a big parking lot, we do a ribbon cutting, right? So, and we get a good amount of people that show up and want to be there for that. But we don't have people standing in line waiting to do a ribbon cutting on a purchase of a snowplow or, you know, we did a new fence or we had a new HVAC system get installed. So road maintenance in general operations itself is not sexy. And I get that, but it's crucial to the success of our mission. Yeah, so and I also get the dichotomy where we're at without stateside funding. We'll continue down unfortunately a sliding downward of how far we can spread that peanut butter. Even if we don't increase, I don't want to do doom and gloom, but we do have to have a sense of awareness that the amount of roads that we can maintain today is far less than what we can maintain 15 years ago. And it's going to be far less than what we can do in 5 years. And so now's the time, I think, to have this conversation, continue the conversation to get this forward. And I truly do appreciate the opportunity to, again, have this conversation with you. And I'll continue to have the conversation with you to ensure that, and I understand every 2 years, this committee is probably going to change over, and we're probably going to have a pretty good changeover this next couple months. But what I am and I said it in my old agency, but this is not time wasted. This is really important conversation, regardless of whether you remain on this committee, whether you go to another committee. You'll take this information with you, and you'll have a relationship with me that if you need a spin up or if you need to answer a question, you feel comfortable enough to pick up a phone and call me, and we can have that conversation. I can try to respin you back up. So thank you again. And then I want to thank the two chairs and taking the opportunity with our agency to kind of talk a little bit offline to get us prepared for this meeting. talking with LSO and Donna and the team about getting you the information on what other states are doing. And then also about some ideas going forward that we can bring forward. One of which, it's in your packet, it's 12-6. I don't know exactly if it's a page, how you guys have it, but 12-6 is an opportunity for potential one-time funding of, in essence, a trust. It's the Montana bill is what we call it. It's what Montana did a couple years ago. They put $100 million into an account. They get 10% of that every year for the next 10 years, and then it's gone. But at least Montana can use that $10 million a year for the next 10 years to help match some federal dollars that are coming in. I like the concept, and I think it's a decent plan. It's albeit 10 years is long. It's not long-term sustainable. It's something that we can move the needle for the next 10 years. I'd also say $10 million a year when we're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars a year short may or may not be enough. 400 million, 500 million into a trust and take 10%, $40-50 million a year, that helps start to move the needle. And so looking at what we have for the federal dollars coming in, it costs $30-40 million a year just to match those federal dollars. And so that alone would help free up some stateside that could go over and help us do some improvements in safety as well. The next one, you guys alluded to it in the last conversation, and I know the county's kind of brought it up. That I want to talk about existing revenue streams that we have right now. Federal mineral royalties, severance tax. Those are existing taxes. We do realize some opportunity underneath the caps right now. FMRs, like you said, were $200 million caps set in 2001. So since 2001, 23, 24 years ago, those caps were set. Nothing has changed in 20 plus years. So those revenue streams being distributed to all the people underneath them. So we realize that cities and towns realize some of that. Counties realize that. UW School Foundation and the School CapCon under the FMR, they realize some of that disbursement under the cap. Over the cap, as the co-chairman said, goes towards the budget reserve general fund, as well as the school foundation. There are several ways you can go with FMR on that, whether you increase the cap, double the cap, or not mess with the cap, go over the tip and start looking at the distributions over the cap. But both of those, both severance and FMR are set up very similarly in that regard. And Representative Obermueller, I know you brought a bill a couple of years ago along the same lines, and I know it was an interesting bill, and it got close, but appreciate your effort there. So looking at FMRs and severance, they are flexible, meaning that we're not hamstrung where we have to spend it. We can spend it on our roads. We can spend it on federal highways, interstates. We can spend it very flexibly in that regard. It's long-term, depending on if you put a sunset on it. If you don't put a sunset, it's long-term. Same with severance, right? The next one is the fuel tax. I think it's in your packet. We just have basically general numbers, 1 cent sales tax for WYDOT. We get about $4.5 million increase in revenue. The state as a whole collects 6.9 million for every 1 cent increase. So the rest of the distribution goes to the counties, the cities, state parks for motorboats and snowmobiles, and ORVs. We do, I think in that packet, I believe in 1210, I think maybe the second page shows the map of the surrounding states. Looking at the surrounding states, we do feel that there's some elasticity comparatively with our surrounding states. Outlier is probably Colorado, but they have a complete different revenue stream south of us here that I don't know. They got all sorts of ways to create fees for their transportation system outside of the fuel tax. And then the last one that the chairman and us have talked about is the Utah tire tax. And I think that's in the packet that Donna put together about, there's several ways to look at a tire tax. You can look at a tax for everything automotive. You could take a certain percentage of that. Some states look at it as just a registration of true tire fee per registration. So when you register your car, I think Donna, you put in there $5 per tire, just for a calculation standpoint. And looking at it from that, that's probably the most administratively appealing. There's not a whole lot to that one. But when you start looking at bringing in NAICS codes and stuff like that, Department of Revenue would probably have to weigh in on the complexity of that. But and then the last one is the Colorado delivery fee. What they're doing in a couple states is, since we've gone to somewhat of an online world, and a lot of people are having a lot of their products delivered to their houses now, I'll just use Colorado. They have a delivery fee. So everything that's delivered has a fee associated with it. And I think the estimate that I believe Donna put together as well, it was like a 27-cent delivery fee, and that could generate some dollars as well. But Mr. Chairman, I've rambled a long time now, but those are just some of the ideas that we're floating around in our heads. Some of the conversations that we've had with you all and some of our industry partners as well. We understand the impact of our infrastructure. We understand trying to make infrastructure sexy is not the easiest thing, but it's horribly important for the success of our state, not only the revenue streams, but the people in which we live with. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd sit for any questions unless, did I miss anything? Okay.
Dennis doesn't want to talk.
Well, I talked enough, Mr. Chairman.
All right, committee, recognize it's the end of a long day. Is there any questions up front? I'm not ready to quite adjourn yet, so I am curious if there's any questions regarding this. This is, in my opinion, give me just a second, Representative Berger, I'll definitely come to you. Been sitting on this committee for 8 years, and I'll be honest with you, I have watched on, and I was trying to pull it up, and I was here when we decided to take the money out in fiscal year 19, move you guys over to just straight general fund, and that or off the general fund. And, you know, that was a big move. And when I looked at this original deal on your 30-year detailed state revenue history, state revenue needed to equal 2008 buying power. I believe it was 2000 when I saw this originally. It was about 280 million a year, or 560 million a biennium. And that was when I first started on this committee 8 years ago. I want to make sure I'm understanding this 651 million that you're looking at there, that's annually. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Dennis Burns, CFO with WYDOT. Mr. Chairman, you're correct. That would be annual. Just to equal our 2008 buying power on the state side funding.
Okay. Yeah. So just in the 8 years committee that I've served on this particular committee, that's the drastic increase that we've seen in the reduction of what our dollar at the state level spends to take care of these roads.
Mr.
So
Chairman,
I'm going to
if I
go
could really quick on that. Every increase that we've seen in revenue with the gas tax, so 14, I believe. 14, we saw an increase in fuel tax by 10 cents, $45 million roughly. We saw a commensurate amount of decrease in general fund or other funds revenue streams. So we've been made whole. And there's reasons for this, and we could go back in the history of why, right? I mean, every time you look at it, you're probably seeing a state revenue dip, right? So we get that. You look at 2008, or I'm sorry, when was the general fund when we came off the general fund in 19. Again, we saw revenue streams dip for the state, and everybody was trying to get more general fund back into the pot for the rest of the state. So we had the opportunity to increase our registration fees. again, decrease our general fund. So we're off the general fund, but for the last 20 some years, we've been flat. So we've seen some increases in revenue, but decreases in revenue to make that net zero. Totally understanding from a team player perspective, totally get that, but it's not moving the needle where we all need it to be moved.
All right, let's start off with Representative Berger, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks, Director Westby. As you look at those maps of revenue or fees that are charged around our state, and thinking about what's south of us I-70 and what's north of us I-90, are companies avoiding those highways or then those interstates because there's so many fees attached to them and just going ahead and through Wyoming? Like if we increase fees, are they gonna avoid us and continue to avoid us, or is I-80 just gonna be I-80 the way it goes because geographically it's just easier? You kind of get where I'm going. Like if you increase a fee, people just will stop, and we won't see the revenue or anything from a fee increase or something like that.
Probably well, especially for the trucking industry, something that we can reach out to Sheila Furch on, but Director.
We got Kevin Hawley here too.
Oh, yep. Oh, that's right. We don't have Sheila anymore. That's right. But definitely, Director, if you have any thoughts on that, I definitely welcome that discussion as well.
Mr. Chairman and Representative, I appreciate the question, and it's probably a little bit unknown. If you look at just fuel tax alone, we're pretty much one of the lowest in the region, so it might draw people. I can't say that it does. But you look at some of the tolls that people get to go on, I think a lot of what we have to offer outside of a month or month and a half in January, February is a very straight path across the country. If you go down to Colorado and on I-70, you're going over some mountain passes as well. And you do get to the opportunity to drive through Denver traffic to do so. And if you don't want to, it's going to cost you a lot of money to go around on the toll road. And that's again, it's a business decision that they have to make and whether it works for them. But I would probably lean towards allowing Kevin to speak on behalf of the industry on that question.
So Representative Berger, what I'll do is let's make sure you remember that, put a pin in that, and then tomorrow for public comment, when we come back in, what we'll do is we'll do public comment on this tomorrow. We'll open this can of worms back up and go to that. But I want to make sure that the committee has a chance to ask any further discussions, and I know I have quite a few. So we're going to start with Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, we mentioned about inflation, we mentioned about the federal government, we mentioned about the increase of revenue somewhat from the federal government. I guess it was my assumption, this is what I'm going to ask, is that we're still far behind because of inflation, even though we have more revenue coming in from the feds to do our road maintenance and such. We by no means are keeping up with the increased cost. And I'll just say the inflation coming from the federal government caused by them, which causes us then to match more money that is real money, which is a problem. But I guess the first question is your opinion about, I assume we're getting behind on what we get in for revenue compared to what the cost of maintenance is or reconstruction. First one. Second one was that the analysis that you've done when it comes to, what do you call it, shave and pave or shave and something, that policy as opposed to this reconstruction of a road. I mean, have they run the numbers and said, hey, it costs X amount of dollars to do this, and long term it pays off for X amount of years? And I mean, it should be a pretty simple equation if your road construction calculations are correct for the longevity of the road. I mean, I assume it's been done, but I just want to hear your opinion. Those are the two questions I had. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Director, yep.
Senator, good questions. And, I'll go back with the answer is no, we're not keeping up with inflation, even on the federal side. They're close, right? They're close to keeping up with inflation, whether it's self-created or not. But the fact that we saw just the first 2 years of this bill, the funding bill for the highway transportation system, We saw $100 million a year increase. That's about a 30% increase in revenue. But our construction inflation was 40-50%. So we are going backwards just on construction inflation, whether it's materials, labor, or what have you. So absolutely, we're still going backwards, even on the federal side. As for your next question on brain fart.
What have we done the analysis on?
Oh, done the analysis, yes. They try to on a regular basis. Unfortunately, over the last 15 years, doing the analysis on it doesn't make sense if we don't have the money. There are times when we have to do a reconstruction because the road is deteriorated to the point where it has to be reconstructed, or at least portions of it. But that's where I think we need to be. If we're going to try to act like a business, we have to get to that cost analysis, life cycle cost analysis, to know that this 2-mile stretch, if we spend $25 million to reconstruct this road, and I don't need to be back here for another 20 years. Or I take that same road and do a mill and overlay, shave and pave, fog seal, chip seal, whatever it is. And I know I'm going to be back within 7 years. But yet every 7 years you add that up, but I only have so much money in this year. And so I have to decide whether I'm going to do 4 shave and paves, 5 shave and paves, or 1 reconstruction. And that's where I think you're going with your question. And yes, they've done the analysis, but over the last probably at least 10 years, they probably haven't done as many of them because we don't have the upfront cost funds to do those. So now we just spread it out and try to get as many surface maintenance projects done.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the first thing that I got brought up, I did that so we can get our congressional delegation at work trying to give justification. I'm sure they're all aware of this, more money. That's the reason. Second, sounds like a great reason for an efficiency study. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, let's keep on going down the line, and Representative Obermueller, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I want to highlight 2 important intergenerational enterprises. One is the Permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund, and with the severance tax money that goes in there, the idea is it's intergenerational. WYDOT is also intergenerational. And so you raised the issue of a bill that I'd previously brought, and that had to do with the discretionary part of the money that's going into the Permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund. If you look at the year 2023, how did we do on these 2 intergenerational ideas? For WYDOT, we did 6.7 million. And for the Permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund, we did 400 million. Now the 80 million of that was discretionary. So I think it behooves the legislature to look at that balance and see if that's an appropriate balance between these 2 really important intergenerational ideas. If we are so enamored with putting money into the permanent fund and don't use any of the discretionary amount for roads, then we need to look into the investment income itself, which is generating around $1 billion, and look at that as a source of an earmark for these funds. So either take the severance taxes directly and rebalance these 2 future ideas that we're talking about, or look at the investment income side of it. And I know, and so there isn't a question there. I'm just responding to the fact that you had brought up my name in a previous context, and I just wanted to explain what that was. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative.
And then Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director Westby. You and I got started about the same time. And if I have my way, we're going to have a lot of time to work together. My background for the last 40+ years is in maintenance. That's what I'm about. And I realize that good, effective maintenance is much less expensive than slapping a Band-Aid on it and waiting for more money to come. I greatly appreciate the comments of both of my cohorts here, especially what you were saying. My view is we have the money. We just have not been allocating it properly. I want to make certain that your agency is doing everything it can to be as efficient as it possibly can. And then I would like to see Wyoming move to a place where it was when I started driving in the mid-70s. And you could come from any state and you crossed into the border of Wyoming and immediately the roads were nice. That's where I want to see us. That's why we have a state government, is to take care of those things. And you start looking at where all the rest of the money is going around, and I mean all, but a tremendous amount of money is being spent in this state on stuff that we shouldn't even be involved with. So my goal over the next several years is to start prioritizing, putting the money back where it needs to be. I want to have nice roads. I want to be proud of this state from the moment you ride into it. And I'm not worried about having a tree zoo here in Cheyenne. Thanks.
All right, let's make sure we've got questions. Wouldn't you agree? Any other questions?
I don't have a question. Thoughts, but that's okay.
Well, yeah, we'll have some committee directives and some public testimony tomorrow. This is really, I would like to, so if you don't have any questions tonight, committee, this is going to kind of wrap up the discussion for tonight. We'll go ahead and get ready to pack up tonight. However, we are going to open up this can of worms again tomorrow morning. We will open it up immediately for committee questions back to the director and Dennis, if you guys have some questions for that. I anticipate at least one or two, and then what we'll do is we'll go right into public comment on this. And would like to hear directly from the Trucking Association about diversion. That's always been a very high topic of discussion, what that looks like, especially when we had the I-80 discussion multiple times. That becomes a very big point of contention. Are they going to divert around? How are they going to do it? Those types of things. So committee, is there anything further tonight before we gavel out for the evening? Any committee directives, any requests?
Go Pokes.
Seeing none, I hear go Pokes. With that, we have a scheduled meeting in here again tomorrow at 8:30. And we will get started immediately on time there. And we hope to, if you do notice, we will have a working lunch tomorrow. And then it is going to be up to the chairman. If we can keep on moving through right now, we're hopefully going to be able to push us through about an hour early on adjournment tomorrow. So, all right, committee, with that, we are good to go for the evening. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 8:30. Thank you.